sparks flew.
He was confident, fun, and friendly.
When she found out that she was pregnant, she was super excited.
Janelle was a wonderful mother.
But when she goes missing, there's immediate fears of foul play.
Because it's really not like her to go without communicating with someone in the family.
I'm like, man, something's not right, something's not right.
We knew that something had to be wrong.
Police will have to follow a winding trail of breadcrumbs to get to the truth.
She was looking for something new, something fresh to get away from her past.
There's no point in us being apart. We might as well just continue to grow and make this a family.
Can they find the missing mother before it's too late?
We found some things that just simply don't add up.
He's got this now. Oh, you think?
They were sworn mortal enemies.
She took things to a whole nother level.
They said, you're not telling us the full story.
They found blood.
Dear God.
July 19th, 2010. It's a sweltering summer day in College Park, Georgia, a buzzing community just south of Atlanta.
In the summertime, we're talking hot. I mean, they don't call it Hot Atlanta by accident.
College Park in July is lively, very lively. It's kind of like almost the end of summer. So it's like that last bit of rush of just wanting to do everything and be outside.
At 10:30 a.m., 22-year-old Aisha Davis is trying to stay cool in the summer heat when she receives an unexpected phone call.
Hey, Errol, what's up?
The call is from Errol Moore, who shares a 5-month-old daughter with Aisha's sister, Janelle Aaron.
He called me and he proceeded to ask me had I spoken to my sister, Janelle. And I told him that no, I hadn't spoken to her.
No. Is everything okay?
I'm not sure.
He was worried because he hadn't spoken weekend.
He stated that he called her multiple times on the phone and that she never answered the phone.
I mean, every time I try, I go straight to voicemail.
Let me try to give her a call.
I hung up with him and then I tried to reach her and I couldn't. And that's what began my worry.
Hey, it's Janelle. I can't get to the phone right now. Leave a message.
Hey, Janelle, give me a call when you get this.
Janelle was pretty tight with her extended family. She talked to them often.
Because it's really not like her to go missing without communicating with someone in the family for days.
So once I reached out to our family and friends, we realized that no one was able to get in contact or had spoken to Janelle in over 4 days.
We knew something was wrong.
Despite a challenging upbringing, 20-year-old Janelle Aaron always kept a positive outlook on life.
We grew up in family and foster care and custody of different family members. It was pretty much her and I against the world. But Janelle was very vibrant. She loved to make people laugh. She loved to what we call roast and joke. Her smile, her presence, she let you know she was here.
We met in high school around 10th grade. She was funny, feisty, really nice, kind, loyal, ride or die.
Janelle was also a dreamer with big plans for her future.
She was into fashion, a fashionista, I would say.
She wanted to be a model originally, but as she got older, Janelle decided that she wanted to be a nurse because she loved taking care of people. She had a knack for making people feel comfortable, making people feel safe.
She had this loving, caring heart, and she wanted to give back.
She was seeking a degree in healthcare into nursing to pursue her final career.
It was around that time Janelle met a fellow student, Errol Moore.
Hey, I think I've seen you in class.
Yes, Mr. Gibson's class, right?
Yeah, I'm Errol.
Janelle.
You mind if I sit?
Of course, you can sit down.
He was confident, and Janelle really gravitated towards that.
So, I'm heading out with some friends after classes this afternoon. You wanna come?
Sounds good. Sure.
Errol was fun and friendly. and they had lots in common in terms of their upbringing.
Once they started dating, the relationship moved fast.
The couple immediately became inseparable. If you saw one, you saw the other.
And in July of 2009, they received some unexpected news that would change their lives forever.
Janelle was dating Errol for about a year when she found out that she was pregnant. She was super excited. She always wanted to be a mother.
She had a natural maternal instinct. She loved children.
The way we grew up, not having our mother in our life in the capacity in which we wanted it, we always said that when we had children that, you know, we were going to be amazing moms.
In February of 2010, her baby girl arrived.
She was excited and happy that she was finally born. She was very attentive, very caring and loving.
Janelle was a wonderful mother.
Once she had her daughter, that's all that mattered. There was nothing more important or a bigger accomplishment for her or achievement than bringing her daughter into this world.
Errol also took parenthood in stride.
Errol, as a father, was very invested. He was present. He definitely showed that he loved her and that he was excited that he had a new baby in the world.
But just 5 months after the birth of her daughter, Janelle's family is worried that something terrible has happened to the young mother.
No one has heard from Janelle in about 4 days, and this isn't like her to just disappear.
Janelle would never leave her 5-month-old daughter behind and just abandon her.
We decided to reach out to the police and put in a missing persons report.
In the summer of 2010, Janelle Aaron was making strides to fulfill her dream of working in healthcare.
She entered Georgia Perimeter College, working to be a nurse.
She and her boyfriend, Errol Moore, had just welcomed a baby girl the same year. They had a bright future ahead of them.
But on July 19th, Janelle has gone missing.
No one has heard from Janelle in about 4 days.
We decided to reach out to the police and put in a missing persons report. When we spoke to detectives, we tried to drive into them how we knew that something had to be wrong. Janelle had never been away from her daughter for any long extended amount of time, not even more than 24 hours, let alone multiple days.
What's so tricky for law enforcement is to try to understand, you know, is this the type of lady who would go missing? Is this the type of lady who was exhausted from, you know, those early months? What do we have here? Do we actually have a missing person?
So we understand Janelle's a new mom, so you don't think she might have just been trying to get away for a little while?
Absolutely not. She loves her daughter.
The family reiterated that Janelle would never leave her 5-month-old daughter behind and just abandon her.
She loved that baby girl.
Where's Janelle's daughter now?
She's at the house with her father.
Did Janelle seem stressed or upset about anything in the days leading up to her disappearance?
Yeah, she's been in a funk lately.
Janelle had been struggling with some postpartum depression.
Janelle dealt with what a lot of women deal with, financially being able to support your child as well as be present at the same time, which, of course, is hard to deal with for anyone.
But that's not all the young mother had been struggling with recently.
Janelle had hit a rough patch with Errol.
Janelle and Errol's relationship was very on again, off again.
And right now they're off. And she's actually seeing somebody new.
Oh, and who's that?
The family told police about this new guy, Tim Williams. This is somebody that Janelle had started dating.
They were in a new relationship, and she talked about him all the time. She was excited about this new relationship and where it could go.
Y'all spoken with this Tim fellow to see if maybe Janelle's with him?
No, we don't have his contact information.
Ladies, thank you for coming in.
However, detectives quickly tracked him down.
After a quick background check, police find out that this Tim Williams worked at a shoe store.
He is a student at Georgia State. He has no criminal background.
Detectives reach out to Tim and ask him to come in for an interview regarding Janelle's disappearance.
I got a phone call from a detective. A detective wanted to see me personally to ask me questions about her whereabouts. And I remember just being shook up.
He's being very compliant and amicable, so he goes into the station for an interview.
Tim, thanks for coming in today.
Of course. Anything I can do to help?
I remember going to the police station and talking to the detectives and just feeling sick.
Now, we're gonna have to ask you some tough questions, okay, Tim?
I'm understanding they have to do their job, but just them asking me certain questions as if like I would know what her whereabouts was, as if I would ever injure anybody but her in particular. How much did I love her? Did I provoke anybody in her circle? Or do I have anybody that's after me that would harm her just to get back at me?
This is all so crazy. I have no idea where she is.
I remember just kind of taking it all in and hitting them with a lot of no sir, yes sir, no sir, yes sir. This is all kind of too much.
I just hope that she's okay. She really means a lot to me.
We just had a spark for each other, like a spark. Like I was really intrigued at how driven she was. Janelle's personality was everything all in once. Like she was so outgoing and bubbly, but she was also a firecracker. And when she loved you, she loved you.
She is just the best mom.
At that time, I didn't have any kids, but I looked at her daughter as mine. Like it wasn't no turning her away from me.
Janelle indicated that she was looking for something new, something fresh to get away from her past. It made Tim believe that whatever she had with Errol is past tense and that he was going to be the man for her moving forward.
Well, when's the last time you've seen Janelle?
Tim says that the last time he talked to Janelle was the morning of July 15th because she had spent the night with him.
What you cooking?
The last time I spoke and saw Janelle, I have this day in my head. It runs back and back and back. And I just remember her making grits, eggs, and biscuits for me.
I have it right here for you, honey.
Oh, son. This looks delicious. Thank you, baby.
You're welcome.
Timothy explains that Janelle and her daughter had been planning to move in with him.
Part of the day's plan was for her to gather up her things and come move into the apartment with me. It was to the point where it was like, there's no point of us being apart. We might as well just like continue to grow and make this a family. And like, this is gonna be your new life.
Well, I gotta get over there.
I remember she gave me a hug, I kissed her.
I love you so much.
Love you too.
She left and she told me she would give me a call later on that day to let me know when she was on her way back.
However, Tim says he never got that call.
Waited for hours and I heard nothing back.
I got honestly concerned, so I called the phone. She didn't pick up.
Later on that evening, Tim finally got a response, but it only raised more cause for concern.
I got a text message back that said, "Who is this?" So I knew that was a concerning point. I was like, I need to go over to this crib that she said she was going to. It was the place that she was sharing with her old ex-boyfriend. I need to go see, make sure everything is okay.
But when Tim went over to the apartment, he didn't find Janelle, her daughter, or Errol.
No one was home as far as I could tell.
Went out there with some childhood friends of mine, and we knocked on the door. We banged on the door because I just had to know she was okay. Nobody ever answered. Tried to peek through the window, didn't see anything.
Well, how does Errol feel about Janelle moving in with you?
Not good. Jealous?
There definitely seemed to be some jealousy issues there. I think Errol viewed the situation as if Tim was trying to take over his family.
But Tim claims Janelle had good reason to leave.
Tim told detectives that he heard Errol had been violent with Janelle in the past.
She didn't tell me a lot of details, but that's part of the reason that she didn't want to be with him anymore.
This information raises red flags for detectives.
If Errol had been violent with Janelle in the past, was it possible that he took things too far?
But before detectives can reach out to Errol, they receive an alarming phone call that will turn the case on its head.
Police get this call from the apartment manager where Janelle lived.
The property manager said, I think y'all want to be aware of this.
They found blood.
In July of 2010, detectives have spoken with Timothy Williams about the disappearance of his girlfriend, 20-year-old Janelle Aaron.
In speaking with Timothy, detectives learned that Janelle was planning to move out of her apartment with her ex, Errol Moore, and start a new life with him.
But that new life never came to fruition.
Timothy claims that after Janelle left his apartment the morning of the 14th to gather her things, he never heard from her again.
And now, detectives have received an alarming phone call from Janelle's apartment complex.
Police get this call from the apartment manager. They had been preparing to lease out her apartment. They had cleaned it out and everything.
And the property manager said, I think y'all want to be aware of this.
They found blood underneath the carpet in the apartment.
Thank you for your time, Tim.
Everything okay?
We'll be in touch. We'll walk you out.
The discovery was made during a routine carpet cleaning.
As the carpet cleaner is, of course, cleaning the carpet, the machinery he uses is applying steam to that area. And as that steam hits, blood starts to come up.
Detectives head to the apartment to view the shocking new blood evidence for themselves.
The padding that was underneath the original carpet was soaked completely in blood, and the wooden subfloor directly underneath that was also soaked completely in blood.
Whoever was at that spot where that stain was starting was bleeding a lot.
And that became the very first sign, beyond their hunch, that we had wrongdoing here, that there was some foul play.
Now more than ever, detectives are eager to speak with Errol Moore. And later that afternoon, they're able to do just that.
He's very cooperative and agrees to go to the station for an interview. He seems very concerned about the blood found at the apartment.
But Errol insists he has no idea how it got there.
Do y'all think that means she's hurt? I'm so worried about her.
We don't know. We've sent the blood off for testing to see if it's a match for Janelle.
Detectives tell him that they know he's been physically violent with Janelle in the past. And Errol doesn't deny it. He says, yes, he has, but they always found a way to smooth things out and make up.
It's definitely not something that I'm proud of. I care about her a lot.
Errol says the last time he saw Janelle was on the 15th, when she was packing up her bags at her apartment.
And then later on, he had no idea where Janelle was at and was unable to get in contact with her. He stated that he called her multiple times on the phone and that she never answered the phone.
Errol admits he wasn't happy about Janelle's plan to move in with her new boyfriend, Tim.
He knew about Tim, he knew that Tim was dating Janelle, but he assures detectives that it was nothing serious.
Listen, Janelle and I have never had the perfect relationship, but we always end up working things out.
He said Janelle was still in love with him and that they were planning on getting back together.
Errol claims that he and Janelle had so much chemistry that in fact the two of them had sex multiple times on the 15th.
What time did she leave?
Well, technically, I'm the one who left.
What do you mean?
Errol Moore mentions that he has another girlfriend.
He says he took the baby to his other girlfriend's house.
Errol's new girlfriend's name is Candace Dean.
So the police are like, well, who is Candace Dean?
Errol told police that he and Candace had dated in high school, then she moved away for about a year, but when she returned, they picked up where they left off.
Janelle wasn't too happy about that, and she started sending Candace messages on social media.
Candace and Janelle were sworn mortal enemies.
Oh, girl, get out of here. He's got this now.
College Park detectives investigating the disappearance of 20-year-old Janelle Aaron are speaking with her ex-boyfriend, Errol Moore.
Errol claims that he and Janelle slept together on July 15th, the same day she disappeared.
And according to Errol, that wasn't his only sexual rendezvous that day.
When he left the apartment, he left to meet up with his girlfriend, Candace Dean.
Candace and Janelle were sworn mortal enemies.
Errol tells detectives the tension between Janelle and Candace reached its peak a few months earlier.
Errol claimed Janelle actually confronted him and Candace.
Oh, girl, get out of here. He's got this now. You think so?
Janelle, just leave us alone.
Errol says he's trying to get Janelle to leave, and then that's when he says Janelle took things to a whole nother level.
Janelle actually escalated it and slapped Errol across the face.
Errol claims he tried to keep his cool.
Errol just told her she needed to leave and she needed to calm down.
Errol said
He was
she
a
finally
handsome
left,
young father
but she and
turned social
Candace
justice
never
warrior.
smoothed things over.
He had 2 twin daughters.
Do you think Candace could have harmed Janelle?
Nah, no way.
Errol told police that he knew that Candace hated Janelle and Janelle hated Candace, but he didn't think that she would want to hurt her.
However, detectives aren't so sure.
They want to speak with Candace immediately to get her side of the story.
So after wrapping up their interview with Errol, they bring Candace in for questioning.
So here's the deal, Candace. Janelle Aaron has been missing since July 15th, and we know the two of you have not been getting along.
So, I haven't seen her in months, and I plan to keep it that way.
Candace says that Errol was only spending time with Janelle because of the baby, and that Errol really didn't want to be with her, and he was truly in love with Candace.
Is that why he slept with her on the 15th before he met up with you?
What?
This information hits Candace hard. She starts crying. She's very emotional.
I can't believe he played me like that.
Candace, listen. Tell us the truth. Did you do anything to hurt Janelle?
No.
Candace admitted that she and Janelle hated each other, but she didn't have anything to do with her disappearance.
Candace confirms that Errol came over to her place on the evening of July 15th, around 7:30 p.m.
She said he went to spend the night with her and left the next day around noon. She never saw or heard from Janelle during that time.
Detectives are suspicious of Candace's story, but they can't hold her on a hunch.
While detectives aren't 100% sure that they can trust Candace, they have no evidence to hold her on, so they end up releasing her.
Without a body or confirmation of Janelle being dead, the police have their hands tied in a lot of ways.
However, when the lab results from the blood found in Janelle's apartment come back, it confirms everyone's worst fears.
The crime lab confirmed, in fact, that the blood within the apartment belonged to Janelle Aaron. We had positive identification at that point that that blood was hers.
At this point, detectives are worried it may be too late to save Janelle. It's clear she lost a lot of blood.
But who did this to her? When Janelle's best friend, Jasmine Clark, comes forward, detectives will get one step closer to answering that question.
Thank you for coming in today. We understand that you may have some information that will be useful to us.
The last time I talked to Janelle was July 15th. On the phone, Janelle was telling me about Tim, and she sounded really excited about this relationship. I remember asking her, well, what about Errol? And she seemed so done. Like, okay, what about him? She was so over it.
Girl, I'm packing up to leave as we speak.
But Jasmine says Errol soon interrupted their conversation.
Janelle! They started arguing, like a verbal altercation, and she was like, basically like, I'm gonna call you back. Basically, when he leaves, I'll call you back. And I said, okay.
Bye, girl.
Factually, Errol was the last person to be with Janelle.
The detectives asked me if I believed that Errol was capable of hurting Janelle, and yes, I did believe that.
Detectives need to get Errol Moore to tell them the truth.
After speaking with her best friend Jasmine, detectives investigating the disappearance of Janelle Aaron are more certain than ever that Janelle's ex-boyfriend, Errol Moore, knows what happened to her.
Janelle's best friend Jasmine overheard her arguing over the phone with Errol shortly before she disappeared.
And according to Janelle's friends, he was known to be violent with her.
The detectives asked me if I believed that Errol was capable of hurting Janelle, and yes, I did believe that.
So based on those facts and circumstances, we knew that it was highly likely that he had a direct involvement with Janelle's disappearance, but we had no proof. We had no eyewitnesses.
Detectives know that if they want any chance of finding Janelle alive, they're going to have to get Errol to come out with the truth.
Later that day, they bring him back in for a follow-up interview.
Welcome back, Errol.
They said, you know, Errol, you're not telling us the full story. We've done our own investigation, and we found some things that just simply don't add up.
What were you and Janelle arguing about that afternoon, and why did you fail to mention it the last time we spoke?
At this point, Errol cracks.
So what Errol Moore finally said was, you know what, it's true. What I'd been telling you wasn't the full story. Errol said, I got in an argument with her about Tim Williams.
Now, what does he have that I don't?
He's nice to me for one thing.
And I'm not nice to you?
Janelle fought back. She argued with him that he was with Candace. He was with somebody else too, so why did it matter if she had moved on?
Just leave me alone.
What? Nah.
Errol admits that the argument became more and more heated.
Errol claims Janelle then escalated the fight to a whole new level.
You're making a mistake. We should be a family.
Errol, I've had it with you.
At that point, Janelle, he says, grabbed a knife.
Errol says he grabbed Janelle's hand, and that's when she dropped the knife, but he says she kept coming at him, and he says that's when he put her in a chokehold.
And then just began choking her, and she began convulsing. After her convulsion, she fell down on the ground, and he said he could not get her up.
Janelle?
What about the blood?
I asked him, did you cut her? Because there was a lot of blood in the house. And he said no, but she was bleeding out the mouth.
Errol said, I panicked and I left with the baby and I left with her things.
Look, I was just so in shock that the situation got so out of hand.
I said, well, where did you go? And he said, well, I went back to my girlfriend's house and I continued my life, basically.
I was confused. I was scared.
He said, I spent the weekend trying to figure out what to do.
And Errol said when a couple days went by, he knew he needed to do something.
As time passed, he was able to gather his thoughts, and then he realized that he had to go back and clean up the crime scene.
At first, he was hoping it was just a horrible nightmare. But when he opened the door, he saw Janelle lying in a pool of her own blood.
Errol didn't really know what to do with the body, but eventually he looked around and he saw a big blue bin that Janelle had used to move her things down to Atlanta. He grabbed the bin and placed her body in the bin.
Then he began cleaning up.
And what'd you do with her body?
Tell us where she is, Errol.
He finally admits that he placed her in a wooded area near Sherwood Cemetery.
Look, you have to believe me. I didn't expect for any of this to happen.
Go ahead and stand up, Errol.
With Errol's confession, Clayton County Police arrest him, and they assemble a team to go out and recover Janelle's body.
We went out to Sherwood Cemetery and started doing a grid search.
Eventually, they see something in the distance there. It looks like something covered in leaves, and they walk up and discover a blue bin.
What's inside that bin is the likes of which investigators have never seen.
Dear God.
In October of 2010, Errol Moore has finally admitted to killing his ex-girlfriend, Janelle Aaron.
He claimed he killed her in self-defense after she came at him with a knife, but investigators don't really buy his story.
After speaking with Errol, investigators have arrived at the location where he claims to have left Janelle's body inside a plastic bin, but they never could have prepared themselves for what they find.
What's inside that bin is the likes of which investigators have never seen.
Dear God.
The badly decomposed remains of Janelle Aaron.
Her body literally melted in that hot Atlanta heat.
Atlanta had a large amount of rain during the summertime. And unfortunately, with that large amount of rain, the actual plastic tote that her body was placed in filled up with water all the way to the top. There wasn't a lot left of her body.
The state of decomposition means proving cause of death will be difficult.
We could never figure out what actually cause of the death was, because there was no physical evidence to say that she was stabbed, choked, because the body was so decomposed.
The news hits Janelle's loved ones like a ton of bricks.
They've informed us that they have found my sister's remains and that Errol led them to her. My first reaction, I screamed. I just screamed.
I remember they telling me that she was deceased. And I remember just dropping down to my knees and crying. I remember like being around people and they like, what is wrong with him? Like, it just broke my heart.
I was heartbroken. I was destroyed. I couldn't understand how Errol was the one saying, come home, and this whole time it was you.
We had been suffering and searching and hoping and wanting and processing and dealing for over 3 months at this point. So the relief came in getting that information that we needed so that we could be at peace. There was minor relief in knowing that he was caught and that he wasn't going to be able to just live out here freely.
Errol is officially charged with Janelle's murder.
He was charged with 1 count of malice murder, 1 count of felony murder, 3 counts of concealing a body, and 1 count of tampering with evidence.
And when he goes on trial in April of 2012, prosecutors don't hold back.
One of the main thrusts of this case for the prosecution was the hypocrisy of it all. The hypocrisy of his actions and the hypocrisy of his words. That is, after she went missing in July, he spent the next 2 or 3 months talking about how much he missed her, talking about how much their baby needed her mother, and then to have it discovered that he knew where her remains were the entire time. And for months he knew, and for months he did nothing about it, while callously disregarding the pain and the suffering that her family was going through. And so that was the story we told.
Errol's defense team echoes the same version of events Errol told detectives, that he attacked Janelle in self-defense. But prosecutors aren't buying it.
Our theory of the case from beginning to end always was and still remains that this wasn't an act of self-defense. This was an act of rage.
Now, what does he have that I don't?
Just leave me alone.
What? Nah.
Janelle never came at Errol with a knife. She was simply trying to leave the apartment.
You ain't leaving.
Okay, can you stop?
I ain't letting you break up our family.
It's surmised that when she tried to leave, Errol slammed her to the ground, with the force of impact causing her to bleed out, resulting in the pool of blood found in the apartment.
This was an act of enraged young man responding to a situation that he could no longer control, and that is namely Janelle moving on and seeing a new guy and starting a new life. He has this personality type of narcissism. I'm gonna be the one to control this. I'm gonna be the one to prevail. And so it's that very personality type that led to the murder in the first place.
But after the jury retires to deliberate, they send shockwaves through the courtroom.
Some of the jury believes that Errol was telling the truth.
You have 12 jurors. You have to have an unanimous verdict. It has to be all 12. When they show what happened, they make a decision, guilty or not.
They can't reach a decision. So ultimately, the court is left to declare a mistrial.
I was extremely nervous when the mistrial happened and that he may get away with it. I was very worried. And he had been twisting the story and maneuvering it the entire time. So there's always that in the back of your mind, like they could possibly believe that. And he could possibly get away with it.
Errol Moore used the self-defense issue, which shows you even more that he really had no remorse for Janelle. If he did, he would take responsibility for it and not put the family through that trial again.
To go through a trial is just grueling in itself. To go through that process, especially with someone who you love and you're close with, but then to watch and hear a mistrial and to just feel like that person is getting away, even if it's just momentarily, that feeling of helplessness, that feeling of that person possibly getting away with taking your loved one from you and there's nothing you can do about it. I don't wish that feeling on anyone.
But prosecutors encourage Janelle's loved ones to keep the faith.
He doesn't get released on bond or nothing like that. They just try it again. To have a verdict, you have to have all 12 people make the same decision on it. It can't be a majority.
So in April 2012, the second trial began. And honestly, I will say I didn't want to get my hopes up. I was hoping that this time around, justice would be served and we would get some progress, but didn't have my hopes up high for it.
This time, the district attorney's office presented basically the same evidence as last time, trying to show that this was not an accident. This was premeditated jealousy.
And this time, the jury agrees.
The jury in Clayton County found Errol Moore guilty of voluntary manslaughter, tampering with evidence, aggravated assault.
Voluntary manslaughter, meaning that Errol Moore did kill Janelle Aaron, but it was in a heat of passion. It wasn't a malice, intentional murder.
Clayton County judge sentenced Errol Moore to 36 years behind bars, which seems like not enough time in this case.
I was relieved when I heard the verdict to an extent, but unfortunately, my sister's life is over. She'll never get to know her daughter. My family and I will never get to speak to her again. We'll never get to see her again. It'll never be fair. It'll never be completely justified, in my opinion.
Eventually, he will be out. Hopefully, he matured and he's forgave himself for his wrongs, and the world will too. But me personally, I never forgive him. A beautiful soul was taken away off jealousy and anger. We lost a great woman, a great mother, a great friend, a soulmate, a sister in this horrible, horrible fatal attraction.
I don't feel or believe that justice was served. This was very unfortunate, a tragedy. It was unnecessary and uncalled for, especially considering that Errol had a whole nother girlfriend. He took a life for nothing. My niece is currently being taken care of by my aunt, and she is in a loving environment, and we're all working together to grow her and give her everything she needs to become a beautiful, amazing woman just like her mom. Janelle, she was a great mother, and she loved her daughter more than anything in this world. And so I just want her to be remembered for the best of who she was, not how she left.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
It was almost like the Wild West of technology. Everyone could see his talent. To lose such an amazing person was just devastating.
She explains that her husband may be alive or dead. She doesn't know because she didn't check.
She was speaking in a very matter-of-fact way, very monotone. This was shocking.
She is concerned that she's losing everything.
I'm not scared.
It wasn't just sex with a stripper anymore. He was supporting someone else.
I was supposed to be with her.
The question was, did she plan to do it?
I couldn't live with my heart being broken every day.
January 1st, 2009, Pomona, California. Just 2 hours into the new year, 21-year-old Jessica Davidson receives a phone call.
She's leaving a New Year's Eve party with her boyfriend when she gets an unexpected phone call from her mother.
Her mom's name is Adrienne Davidson. So Adrienne calls her daughter Jessica to come to the house. And she says, I will tell you when you get here, I need you to just come.
Jessica and her boyfriend rush to the Davidson home, where Adrienne lives with her husband, Ezra, and Jessica's younger brother.
When they got to the house, Adrienne was outside in the driveway waiting for them.
And she says, okay, I need you to take your brother to your grandparents' house.
She makes a second request.
Adrienne announces that she needs the boyfriend to take her somewhere. Jessica asks where. In response, Adrienne says the police station.
Confused but seeing her mom's urgency, Jessica goes inside to wake her brother.
It's kind of spooky, kind of weird. She's not sure what's happening.
Adrienne Renee Pert was born in 1962 in West Orange, New Jersey. She grew up in an upper-middle-class household with her parents and 3 siblings.
Adrienne's dad was a well-to-do dentist. She had 2 younger sisters by the same mom, and then they also had an older half-sister. For whatever reason, it seemed to be that Adrienne had somewhat of a difficult place in her family.
Adrienne's dad would question her intelligence. He would call her stupid. He would say she was sexually promiscuous. He would take a switch and spank her with things he didn't do to the other daughters.
After high school, her father sent her to Spelman College, which is an HBCU located in Atlanta, Georgia.
One of the things he did was make it really clear to her that even though he was sending her to college, his goal for her really was not so much that she get an education, but that she find a husband.
True to form, her father set up a blind date for her once she got down to Atlanta with the son of one of his college buddies. A gentleman named Ezra Davidson, who was a college student at nearby Spelman College in Atlanta.
Ezra came from Detroit, where his father was a successful OBGYN.
Ezra grew up in a very affluent household. His parents divorced at a relatively early age. He lived primarily with his mom.
There was an instant connection.
These are people who have a lot in common. They have these family backgrounds that go along with each other. They've had similar ambitions. They're both smart.
But as they got to know each other, it was what they didn't have in common that drew them closer.
He's described as very charismatic, very charming, gregarious, outgoing, pretty social. Whereas in Adrienne is described as the inverse, very to herself and a homebody.
She experiences happiness for the first time. She was deeply in love with him.
The couple dated for 2 years. Then, the happiness Adrienne waited so long for disappeared in a matter of weeks.
In junior year, Adrienne gets overwhelmed academically and drops out. And then soon after, Ezra breaks up with her. It was the night of a party that they had planned to have at Adrian's apartment. And even though Ezra has broken up with Adrian, he decides to still go ahead with the party, and Adrian is allowing it.
This is absolutely devastating to her. And, you know, we can all relate to being upset over a breakup, but this is, in some respects, I think, life-altering for her at the time. Adrian goes into her bedroom and takes an entire bottle of sleeping pills and slits her wrist in an attempt to kill herself over this breakup.
Her sister finds her and engages 911, takes her to the hospital. She's held there for observation.
Adrian is released the next day.
This does speak to a level of emotional dependence that is concerning. And it's concerning because it suggests that Adrian feels like she can't live without somebody else. And that's a dangerous place to be.
After the suicide attempt, Ezra comes back and cares for Adrian.
I do think that he felt on some level responsible for that, and then responsible for her.
Within a month, they were back to being a happy couple. During Ezra's senior year of college in 1984, the couple ends up getting married.
That same year, Ezra graduated magna cum laude with a degree in accounting. He easily secured a job at a top-ranked firm. A few years later, Adrian gave birth to Jessica.
She was a housewife. She was very devoted to Ezra. She moved with him for his work. They lived for a time in Austria.
They moved back to the United States, end up in California. Their son is born. Things are kind of trucking along.
Ezra decided to switch gears, making what he hoped would be a lucrative move from accounting to technology.
I met Ezra through my ex-husband who had a software company, and Ezra was an employee working in business development. He just picked it up very quickly and understood the technology and was able to work with clients to get them what they needed. He was just such a charismatic guy and vivacious and just drew people in, but he was also extremely intelligent. At that point, everyone could see his talent and his ability to work with customers and bring in new business. So that's why he was invited to join the new company as a partner.
This venture was one of the first of its kind to figure out how to put digital media on the internet.
For almost a decade, the company flourished.
In the early 2000s, it was almost like the Wild West of technology. And we reached a point in the company where we had grown significantly. We had some really strong contracts, and we decided that it was time to exit.
In September 2007, Ezra and his partners sold the company for a sizable profit. The windfall marked a new chapter for Ezra.
My ex-husband and Ezra were spending their social time together. They were going out to LA quite a bit. They were entertaining people at a higher level than prior with bottle service and spending more money because they had this newfound money, I believe. And so it was a happy time for them.
By late 2008, Jessica was in college. Adrian devoted her time to raising her son and taking care of Ezra. The entire Davidson family was enjoying Ezra's success.
He was able to put a lot of money down as a down payment on what he thought was his dream house in Pomona.
With a new home and a flush bank account, everything seemed to be going good for the family.
But the early morning hours of New Year's Day 2009 bring uncertainty. At Adrian's request, Jessica wakes her younger brother and ushers the sleepy child into her car.
Jessica is not sure what's happening, but she complies.
Jessica gets in the car with her brother and starts heading to the grandparents' house, and the boyfriend starts driving Adrian to the police station.
Eventually, Adrian arrives at an LA County Sheriff's Department substation.
Adrian walks up to the desk sergeant and, without any emotion, tells him, "I'm here to turn myself in."
Just hours into 2009, 46-year-old Adrian Davidson walks into a police substation in Los Angeles County, requesting to turn herself in. Adrian explains why.
She tells the police that she shot her husband and that he's back at their house in bed. She was speaking in a very matter-of-fact way, very monotone. This was obviously something that, was very shocking.
Certainly not every day that someone walks in and tells the desk sergeant that they just killed someone. So, for one, he's going to be taken aback by the rarity of what just happened. But also, the fact that she does it in a steady state is going to be a bit off-putting, to say the least. The desk sergeant isn't going to ask any questions about the crime. They're going to get it in the hands of a detective.
Investigators step out to speak with Adrian.
Adrian explains that the shooting took place about an hour earlier in the upstairs bedroom at her home. She explains that her husband may be alive or dead. She doesn't know because she didn't check, nor did she call 911.
Given the nature of her claim, investigators dispatch patrol officers to the Davidson home, hopeful they will find Adrian's husband, Ezra, alive. Both Adrian and Jessica's boyfriend are told to stay put.
The police, not knowing all of the details, they tell him that they're going to be impounding his car, as well as taking Adrian into custody because of the confession that she's made.
Jessica's boyfriend calls her and says, you got to come get me because they're impounding my car. And Jessica's like, what is going on?
He's not sure what's going on. He explains that the police took her mother back for questioning.
Jessica rushes to the station. Meanwhile, police officers arrive at the Davidson home.
The officers find Ezra Davidson lying motionless under the covers in the master bedroom. He is dead due to a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. Adrian was telling the truth. A 9mm shell casing is found behind the bed, and the 9mm handgun itself is found in a box in the closet. A tag on the side of the box indicates that the gun was sold to Adrian Davidson on December 15th, 2008. The evidence at the crime scene supports Adrian Davidson's story, but nothing explains why.
Back at the station, investigators put that question to Adrian.
She was speaking in a very matter-of-fact way, very monotone. You maybe wouldn't expect someone to have that calm of a demeanor considering what had taken place.
Adrian doesn't offer up details as to what led to the shooting, only that she is responsible.
She shot him, she put the gun up, she cleaned up, she got dressed, she made sure that her son did not go into the room, she closed the door, she called Jessica, and she was driven to the police station so she can confess. That is totally inconsistent with what a murderer does. After a murderer commits a crime, a murderer tries to stage the scene to make it seem like they did nothing wrong. And the last place they'd go is they go to the police department.
She could have concocted any story she wanted to about what had happened. They'd gotten some kind of a struggle, some kind of a fight. The gun accidentally went off. She doesn't do any of that.
Adrian's 21-year-old daughter Jessica arrives. By now, she is in a full-blown panic.
As an investigator, you're going to read the situation and make some tactical decisions as to how you want the interview with Jessica to play out. Do you want to lead with the fact that he's dead and see how she reacts? Do you want to hold that back and see how she plays to see if she admits that she's aware of it or not admit to it? So in this case, it sounds like they decided to just come straight at her and explain the situation. First thing they do is break the news to her that her father is dead.
And at that point, Jessica finds out that her mom has confessed to shooting her dad, which is the last thing that Jessica was expecting. Jessica is just reeling with this.
Despite her shock, investigators hope Jessica can shed light on what transpired between her mother and father.
She does talk to the police and she tells them about what she knows about their parents' relationship.
Jessica explains that she recently found out that her father is having an affair.
On January 1st, 2009, police in Pomona, California interviewed 21-year-old Jessica Davidson about the shooting death of her father, Ezra. Jessica explains that a few weeks earlier, her mother asked her for help with a computer.
It seems that Ezra has decided to write a book. So Adrian wants to look at the book, and she asked Jessica to help her go onto the laptop.
Jessica helped her mother find the document.
Adrian went and read a manuscript, and there was a character in the book, and the way that character was described sounded like this woman that he worked with.
The name in the book is very similar to his secretary's name, and so she digs a little bit deeper, and that's where she sees details of email exchanges that reveals to her that he has been having an affair with his secretary, who happens to also be a college student who's about 20 years old.
Jessica explained that one email in particular sent her mother into a tailspin.
She finds essentially a written contract between her husband and her husband's mistress, where her husband has agreed to pay her rent, to pay part of her tuition, and to pay her car note in exchange for sexual favors.
This person that he's involved with is 20 years old, basically a year younger than their daughter. And so for her, it's like, you know, the world is crashing down.
Adrian was very surprised, she was very shocked, she was very upset.
For detectives, the revelation offers potential insight into Adrian's actions.
As an investigator, and from a legal standpoint, you don't ever have to prove motive, but finding out what the motive is something that gets the investigators' ears to perk up, and they're gonna try and pull on that thread to see how far it goes.
Investigators continue to question Jessica. She admits that she too was upset. Her father had been far less generous when it came to her.
Jessica is like, I'm driving a junk car, and my dad isn't helping me financially. She feels disrespected. She feels unloved that her dad is choosing to put a 20-year-old girl above her as his daughter.
Jessica and Adrian discussed what to do next.
Jessica asked her, you know, what do you want to do about this? I think maybe you should just go get a divorce. And her mom said, you know, I'll just figure it out, I'll handle it.
A few days later, Adrian took her findings to Ezra.
According to Jessica, her mother confronted her father about the affair, and he admitted to it. He explained that he had no intention of ending the affair, and he even went so far as to give Adrian an ultimatum.
He basically tells her she is number two, she being Adrian, and the young lady is number one.
He told her to either accept that he was going to be having affairs or he would divorce her.
Adrian did not want to get a divorce because not only religiously that it was not something that she agreed with, but also her identity and her attachment to her husband was a huge deal. She didn't see herself being by herself and not with her husband.
In the following days, Jessica says her mother called her incessantly.
This is very atypical of their relationship. Her daughter Jessica describes her as somebody who was, in some respects, emotionally distant, not somebody who would talk about her problems, and yet all of a sudden her mom is talking to Jessica every day, calling her multiple times.
After several days of agonizing over the situation, Adrian decides that she doesn't want a divorce and that she's willing to allow Ezra to have his affairs.
Adrian feels like she doesn't have any options. It doesn't necessarily sit right with her, but she tries, right? She's trying to say, okay, you know what, it's fine. I still have my home. I still have my life. I still have my husband. I still have my children. This can be okay.
Jessica says that on New Year's Eve, the whole family gathered at the Davidson home for dinner.
Jessica's there with her boyfriend, and they have a delightful dinner. Everything is going very well. After dinner, Jessica and her boyfriend leave to go to a New Year's Eve party.
Jessica and her boyfriend left around 9 p.m. Several hours later, she received the call from Adrian asking her to return home. Now, Jessica is demanding to know what happened after she left.
Jessica says to the police, I am not leaving this police station until I talk to my mom. And so they allow her to go in and talk to her mom.
There's no downside from the investigator standpoint to letting this conversation take place because they know that it's going to be recorded, and even if you tell someone it's going to be recorded, once they get into the emotional exchange between a mother and a daughter about killing the father, it's a pretty good bet that something's going to slip out.
Did you plan this?
Just hours after the shooting death of businessman Ezra Davidson, his 21-year-old daughter confronts his alleged killer, her mother, Adrian Davidson. Investigators listen in.
What happened? You know what happened. What? No, I don't, Mom. I don't want to know, but what I need to know is, like, what set you off?
Up to that point, Adrian had been very calm, very matter-of-fact, but when she spoke to her daughter in the interview room, she really broke down.
I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you, Mom. I love your father. It just broke my heart.
But it's where the conversation goes next that really catches the attention of investigators.
I mean, is this what you meant when you told me you were going to take care of things on the first?
For the investigators, their ears are going to perk up when they get this tidbit where Adrian tells Jessica she's going to take care of everything on the first. And here we are on the first, and the husband's dead. To the police, this sure sounds like what she's saying is she meant to kill her husband on New Year's Day. But Adrian doesn't answer the question directly.
Jessica, kept asking her mother, why did you decide to do this? You should have just left him.
I got scared. Scared of what? I don't want to be your father. I just love your father so much. Mom, we would have figured a way. We would have taken care of things. I couldn't live with my heart being broken every day. It just broke my heart.
I know, Love.
Following the conversation, Jessica and her boyfriend are allowed to leave. However, Adrian is placed under arrest.
The investigators are left trying to figure out, do they arrest her for first-degree murder or manslaughter? And whether or not this is a premeditated crime or whether it's a crime of passion. They've got some information that suggests she's in this emotional state, but other pieces of information that are explaining that she's making very clear and calculated decisions.
Hoping to find out, investigators keep digging. They track down the gun dealer who sold Adrian the gun on December 15th. One day after she had learned that her husband was having an affair.
The gun dealer explains that Adrian told him that she was buying a weapon for self-defense.
She tells him her husband goes on business trips and she needs to feel safe.
But Adrian didn't leave with the gun.
The law in California states that there's a 10-day waiting period after you purchase the gun between when you make the purchase and when you can actually pick it up. And it's to prevent people from committing rash acts like suicide or murder.
She still goes and picks the gun up on December 29th. She comes home and she puts the gun in her closet. Doesn't tell anybody that she has the gun.
Was Adrian really looking to protect herself? Or was she planning her husband's murder? Investigators look at the couple's finances. They learn that in the 2 years since he sold his company, Ezra enjoyed a new lifestyle thanks to the hefty profit.
He goes through a period where he just wants to party and go out and have a good time. And he's celebrating, he's taking other people out to dinner, he's spending money on his employees. And it seems like Adrian is taking more and more of a backseat in their relationship.
Ezra got caught up in the excitement of having all this money, and he and my ex were going out and celebrating and drawing a lot of attention. I think in his mind, he was just enjoying his life and having fun and spending money.
By the end of 2008, Ezra's spending caught up with him.
Investigators determine that the family has fallen behind in their mortgage payments and are in risk of losing their house.
A fact investigators believe could have fueled Adrian's anger over the affair.
Yet, with all these financial difficulties, Ezra is still finding a way to make the payments of his mistress's rent.
He is spending all this money on somebody while their family was suffering. He's going to continue to do this. She's angry.
The question was, did she kill him as a result of provocation, or did she plan to do it?
Almost a month after the murder, investigators believe they have the answer.
On January 29, 2009, Adrian is charged with first-degree murder. Now, prosecutors must hope that a jury believes that Adrian is a vengeful, premeditated murderer.
In February 2010, Adrian Davidson is on trial for fatally shooting her husband of 24 years, Ezra. She is charged with first-degree murder.
It shocked me when they refused to offer her a manslaughter. It was an unlawful killing, clearly, but it was a manslaughter.
The prosecution make their case.
They point out that Adrian went out and bought a handgun the day after she found out that her husband was cheating on her.
She had to decide, I'm going to buy a gun. She had never had a gun before. She had to research what type of gun she should get. She had to locate a gun dealer. She had to talk to the gun dealer. And she put the gun in her room where she could use it.
Adrian's attorneys present their side.
In Adrian's defense, they didn't contest that she actually committed the killing. But what they were saying is that it took place in the heat of passion, that it wasn't a premeditated murder.
Jessica takes the stand, testifying about an incident that happened when the family lived in Austria.
Jessica remembers her mother getting upset with her father after finding out that he'd been having an affair with a stripper.
And her response is to take all of his clothes, and she cuts holes in all of his business shirts, and she also cuts out his face from a lot of their family photographs.
Ezra retaliated.
The daughter said she remembers her father dragging her mother down a flight of stairs by her hair. The daughter testified to how her father was abusive verbally and how he would beat her mother. Once they moved back to the United States, the beatings, the humiliations continued. He was constantly having affairs, constantly beating her, constantly humiliating her.
The defense calls who they hope will be their star witness, Adrian Davidson. Adrian testifies about her marriage.
She just wanted someone to take care of her, to value her, to validate her. And the truth of it is that Ezra was not always unkind. There were a lot of times where Ezra was glowing and made her feel good. And so for Adrian, there was a benefit to her being the wife of Ezra and continuing. And that benefit allowed her to compartmentalize or become apathetic to the things that weren't working well.
But in light of Ezra's latest affair, her whole world felt uncertain.
It wasn't just sex with a stripper anymore. He was supporting someone else.
She is concerned that she's losing everything, everything. She's losing her emotional security, her financial security. I mean, everything that she uses to base her identity on.
She tells the jury that on the night Ezra died, she made an impassioned plea to her husband.
She asked Ezra, look, I just want to have you New Year's Eve and New Year's Day without the Mr. Sping involved. That's all I'm asking for right now. I'm going to accept her, but it's the beginning of the year. I just want to start it off with you.
Ezra agreed.
Ezra brought dinner and champagne home with him and spent time with Jessica and her boyfriend, who were headed out later to a party with their friends.
Jessica and her boyfriend left at around 7. And then Adrian and Ezra had from what all accounts was a nice evening together.
Eventually their young son goes to bed, and it's just the two of them.
They drank champagne, they slept together, they also watched New Year's festivities on TV. When the time came for the countdown for the new year, Adrian was excited to share that moment with Ezra.
They watched the ball drop in New York. She was very much in love with him that night and very much enjoying that night. And she asked her husband, could he stay there? Could they have not only New Year's Eve, but New Year's Day also? And he told her no. New Year's Day will be for his girlfriend.
Crestfallen, she went to bed and waited for Ezra to join her. But he never did.
She came back downstairs to see what was happening with Ezra.
She sees that he's on his phone texting his girlfriend. She's assuming that he's texting the girlfriend.
And I think that just became so symbolic for her. It is the start of a new year, and this is how it started.
Adrian says she returned to the bedroom.
She is just stewing over this, and she just has all this emotion. He comes up, and she tries to talk to him again. I'm just asking you for a few things. on the holidays, don't talk to your mistress. Just reserve the holidays for our family and make sure that you're financially responsible for our family and for our children. And he just says, no, it's your problem. Deal with it on your own. I'm not making any promises to you.
He turned over, went to sleep. She was devastated. She went in the closet almost like on remote control, got the gun, was intending on shooting herself in the head.
But before she knew it, things would take a very different turn. Adrienne Davidson is on trial for the first-degree murder of her husband, Ezra. She testifies that on the night of his death, she retrieved the gun from the closet with the intention of taking her own life.
She starts thinking about the logistics of it, the details of it, like where is she going to shoot herself? She decides to kill herself in bed.
She wants him to find her laying next to him, dead.
She held the gun to her head. She put the barrel of the gun in her mouth, all while he's there sleeping soundly.
She's upset and he's sleeping like there's no care in the world, like a baby. And it's too much for her.
Before she knew what she was doing, she turned the gun on her husband and pulled the trigger.
Just instantly, she changed the gun and shot him in the head.
The defense closes, arguing that the only thing Adrienne planned was her own death.
She goes there to purchase a handgun with the intention to take her own life. And why do I say I'm very strong and clear on that? Because all of her life, at various parts, she's been suicidal. She actually attempted suicide when Ezra broke it off. What you don't have with her is a history of violence at all.
Will the jury agree?
The case goes to the jury on March 9th, 2010. It only takes the jury 3.5 hours to deliberate. They come back with a guilty verdict. They find 47-year-old Adrienne Davidson guilty of first-degree murder.
By law in California, first-degree murder carries a sentence of 25 years to life. The sentencing enhancement of using a gun in the commission of the murder also carries an additional 25 years. So the judge didn't have any ability to give a sentence, less or greater than 50 years to life.
Adrienne's incarceration leaves their son to be raised by family members.
She should have divorced him, but she chose something that was horrible and unimaginable, and it just ruined so many lives.
Cases like this.
Miami, Florida is a multicultural mecca with its sun-soaked beaches, legendary food, and electric nightlife. The city attracts tourists from all over the world. It's also one of the most influential sports towns in America. Whether it's the Marlins, Dolphins, Hurricanes, or Heat, Miami's love for its hometown teams and its athletes runs deep. And in 2007, when one of the city's hometown sports heroes is gunned down while defending his young family from a group of brazen killers, a single bullet has devastating consequences. In the late 19th century, the city of Miami sprang up along Florida's east coast seemingly overnight. Its sudden rise to prominence earned it the nickname Magic City. Since then, it has grown from a tourist destination into one of the most culturally diverse and endearing cities in America.
Everyone wants to live in Miami for the music, the culture, the food, the beaches. Miami is just this beautiful paradise
where it's hot 365 days of the year. And it's just this wonderful place to live. Like, I feel like Miami is its own country. Although we're a city, we really are our own country. So I think people want to live here. People want to come to Miami because you can literally walk down the street and see a celebrity. So that's another reason why Miami is just so special. And as we say here in Miami, we're born and raised in the county of Dade, and it's such a special place to live and to, you know, just to be here, to be born and raised in Miami.
There's over 120 languages that you can find here in Miami. There's a uniqueness within each neighborhood that you go to.
Residents from Latin America, Africa, and the Caribbean make up over half of Miami's population, creating an energetic atmosphere unlike any other.
We have different pockets of where you have concentrated populations of color. You'll have Little Haiti, then you may have Cayocho, Little Havana, where you'll find the Cuban population. And then you'll have the pockets where the Black people may live, Brownsville, Liberty City, Overtown, Caras City. And I think that's what makes Miami so special, is that you can experience all different cultures in one location.
I'm pretty sure you get like just the melting pot aspect of everything, or even a salad bowl, because it's not even so much of everything kind of blending together. There's a uniqueness within each neighborhood that you go to. Some key neighborhoods that really stand out are like Little Havana. Literally, I have been told so many times that stepping onto the main vein of Little Havana, which is Cayocho, is like stepping into Cuba, literally. When you get to Wynwood, Wynwood is more of an art scene. So it's actually created by Tony Goldman. He had the idea of creating this outdoor open air museum after creating the Soho district in New York.
No matter where you come from or which neighborhood you call home, most Miamians will agree on one thing. Their shared love of sports brings everyone in the city together.
To be able to go and see the university play, it's amazing to kind of feel that spirit and to see how everybody, they get angry together. They're going to yell together, high five each other once that touchdown is made. You get to see that. Even when it comes to soccer. I remember specifically going onto Lincoln Road on South Beach, and it was dead silent because there was a game going on. And then all of a sudden you hear the uproar of people yelling and screaming, coming together because that goal was made by their favorite team. So being able to see it kind of played out throughout the areas and being able to see everyone come together. It doesn't matter about your background, your diversity, what may have kind of separated you, so to speak, from any other culture. You come together for the love of the game.
When you're sitting in the stadium rooting for the University of Miami, it doesn't matter where you were originally from or what nationality, or, you know, if you're from South America, Central America, from Europe, you're all rooting for the same team, and it brings everybody together, and that's one of the beauties of sports.
But in the winter of 2007, a single bullet would send shockwaves throughout Miami's close-knit fan base, and it would leave a beloved hometown sports hero fighting for his life. Just before 2 a.m. on November 26, 2007, Miami-Dade detective Juan Segovia gets called out to an attempted murder scene.
That morning, I was actually sleeping. My team was on call that night, and I was dead asleep, but my phone went off. Traditionally, when we're on call, I knew we were getting called out for some sort of a case, and I remember specifically just getting an address and that somebody had been shot. You know, I'm the type of detective that I don't like getting a lot of information up front. Some guys do, I don't. Just give me the address and I'll start getting ready. And I remember just jotting the address down on a piece of paper on my nightstand. I took a quick shower and I started heading out. I began to prepare myself mentally, and I'll begin to gather more information. By that time, usually I'm calling the other guys on my team, or I'll call the detective that notified me initially, and I'll try to gather more information to see what else has developed since they got notified, get a little more detail as to what occurred, you know, during the homicide. And the detective that called me, he goes, "Oh man, you got a big one." He goes, "Sean Taylor was shot. He's critical. He's being transported. So, you know, good luck." It took me like a full 3 seconds to register the name Sean Taylor, and I thought to myself, Sean Taylor, the football player.
Although NFL star safety Sean Taylor played for the Washington Redskins, he was a Florida native and maintained a home in the upscale Miami enclave of Palmetto Bay.
It's not a place where violence happens, so it really was sort of a mystery and a shock when this happened.
I remember pulling up a couple blocks away, and as I'm approaching the house, I could see in the distance a lot of lights. And as I got closer, it was just a sea of media on scene already. So the word had gotten out, and the media had already responded. So I navigated as much as I could. It got to the point where I couldn't go any further from the amount of trucks and media that was in front of the house, and I walked the rest of the way through. Noticed the amount of blood signified arterial bleeding, so I knew it was serious.
Sean's girlfriend, Jackie Garcia, and the couple's 18-month-old daughter are still on the scene, but both are seemingly unharmed. Even though Jackie was in the home at the time of the shooting and was the person who called 911, Detective Segovia holds off on speaking to her for now, even though she's likely his best witness.
You're dealing with someone who now knows their loved one is in critical condition. Their mind is completely somewhere else. You know, she's worried about the health of Sean Taylor, not so much the health of my investigation. So I don't want to push too much.
As Juan and his team begin to develop a game plan for their high-profile case, word gets back that, just as they had suspected, a bullet has torn through Sean's right femoral artery, and his condition is extremely dire.
It's usually not a good outcome for the victim. And I knew that Sean had a very tough fight ahead to stay alive.
Sean Taylor was born on April 1st, 1983, and spent most of his childhood growing up in nearby Homestead, Florida.
Sean was very active. He always liked to catch lizards, play in the yard, play street football, go fishing. He kept busy all the time.
I noticed his energy at a young age. You know, typical kid, but it was something different about him. You could actually see where he was really intense and focused and very, very competitive.
After his parents divorced, Sean went to live with his father in Miami's Overtown neighborhood. His career in football began soon after that.
My memory of him is just that, him being the fireball, running around beyond everybody else. I called him Mr. Bamalam because every time he came to the play and he gets to the play, it's done. Bamalam.
He played for the South Dade Rams. And it's funny because there's a lot of guys in the stands that would be betting on kids, and they would be betting that Sean was going to knock somebody out or he's going to score a touchdown.
Sean's family threw their full support behind their budding star.
At first, I couldn't watch him play and do those hits. I would be afraid he's going to get hurt. But as time went on, I started enjoying it and getting into it.
By the time Sean graduated high school, colleges across the nation were lining up to sign him. But he chose to stay in Miami, and the city loved him for it.
To see the love that he got from the fans, to see how he responded, it's kind of like he knew when you stay home and you play for the University of Miami, you have the city on your back.
After 3 successful years with the Hurricanes, Sean set his sights on the NFL. And in 2004, his hard work paid off when he was drafted in the first round by Washington. Sean and his family were elated.
Everybody was hugging and, it was a big celebration. The way he smiled, it was like, yeah, I did it, This is just the start of something, special.
Sean signed a 6-year, $18 million contract that changed his life and the lives of everyone in his family.
He wanted to change some people's lives that were close to him, his mom especially. When you see your mom working a lot and you know that they're making a sacrifice for you, I know for a fact that that was what really drove him.
2 years later, in 2006, Sean had even more to celebrate when he and his girlfriend, Jackie, welcomed their first child into the world.
That changed his life because now it was my number one priority is my child. I saw him take it very seriously.
That love that you're getting from a child is unconditional, and it makes you into a better person. It changes you, your thought process, your movement. It did everything for him. It's nothing like that. He definitely enjoyed it.
But now Sean is clinging to life, and the news of his shooting spreads through his family like a wildfire.
I was walking in my hallway, just walking back and forth. I couldn't sleep for some reason. And that's when I got the call, and his dad told me what had happened, that he was shot. I don't even remember anything after that.
I was at the Hard Rock Casino, and I was playing poker. Don't know how much money I had, but I got the call that he got shot. And I just walked out the building and got in my car and just drove.
While investigators at the scene try and piece together what happened to Sean, his loved ones descend upon the hospital, hoping for some good news. His prognosis, however, remained grim.
He was bleeding profusely, like every time the blood, he would go out there try to put the blood back in. Even thinking about it was horrible.
I think being a world-class athlete will help in certain situations, but a lot of things would have to go right, and there was a lot of things that didn't go right that night.
As doctors desperately fight to save the life of NFL star Sean Taylor, investigators begin searching his Miami home for clues to explain what happened to him that night.
We start doing an assessment of the residence from the outside, and we very quickly determined that there had been forced entry into the residence from the rear of the house. You could see wood shavings and wood debris on the ground, and when you see the door itself, it was very easy to determine that someone had just pried that door open with some sort of metal object.
Detectives carefully work their way through Sean's home. For the most part, nothing seems to be out of place.
That immediate area appears to be undisturbed. Nothing that stood out to us, nothing that was alarming.
That all changes as they approach Sean's master bedroom.
There's a little hallway, and you can already see blood on the ground.
In addition to the large amount of blood outside Sean's bedroom, detectives also find some damage to the bedroom door.
We could immediately see on scene a faint outline of a shoe against that door. So I knew the confrontation had occurred there. I knew that it was probably something very quick. Not a lot of physical involvement, and he had been shot and he had collapsed right there on the same spot. There wasn't any blood splatter that I could see. There weren't any signs of a fight.
Detectives also find a single 9mm shell casing outside Sean's bedroom.
There's scenes that you get to, there you have absolutely nothing. So the fact that you can locate a casing is a positive.
While CSIs continue processing the scene, Detective Segovia turns his attention to Sean's girlfriend, Jackie Garcia.
Because she was in the house at the time it happened. She was going to be able to tell us at least a story that would explain some things to us. So getting to her was of utmost importance.
Through her shock, fear, and pain, Jackie tells detectives that she and Sean were asleep with their 18-month-old daughter when she was awakened by the sound of someone breaking in.
She immediately called out to Sean and woke him up and told him, I heard something in the house. At that moment, Sean Taylor reached behind the headboard of the bed and pulled out a machete that he had back there for protection and begins to walk around the bed.
And then next thing you know, door gets kicked open. Shot rings out, and then it's just all pandemonium. Jackie's crying, she's terrified.
The next thing she remembers is grabbing a cell phone and calling 911. She remained in the bedroom until uniform officers arrived. Ms. Garcia, unfortunately, never saw anybody.
It really was like something out of like a mystery thriller kind of Hollywood plot.
Detectives have no reason to doubt Jackie's story, and she's ruled out as having any involvement from the beginning.
His fiancée was of utmost importance and was extremely helpful because she was able to tell us exactly what happened the moment he got shot and everything that led up to that.
Detectives believe a broken sliding glass door was the shooter's likely exit.
The sliding glass door was completely shattered. The majority of the glass was on the outside, on the patio area, indicating to me that it had been broken from the inside going out.
Detectives locate security cameras in Sean's house, but unfortunately, they weren't actually connected at the time. It's a definite blow to the investigation.
Kind of like that Rocky saying, you know, life is about getting hit and continue moving forward. That's kind of what it's like as an investigator. Every time you get knocked down, you just get back up and you move on to the next thing.
A canvas of Sean's neighborhood doesn't provide many more details either.
The houses are not on top of each other. Most of the property lines are divided either by a big fence or walls, and nobody heard anything. So we were never able to gather anything pertinent to the case from our area canvas.
Throughout the night and into the morning, police continue their investigation, while Sean's loved ones continue to pray for his recovery.
He ended up landing in probably the best trauma hospital in the world at Jackson Memorial Ryder Trauma Center, and they were able to repair the artery, but I knew that was a long shot.
On November 27th, Sean's valiant fight for his life comes to a devastating end.
Sean lost so much blood, he went into a coma, and then from the coma, he passed away. So just innocently being home and protecting his family from an injury cost him his life.
It hit us hard. I'll never forget one of the doctors saying that he had never seen someone fight so hard to stay alive, and that always touched me.
It was heartaching, believe me. It crushed me. Yep, I'm not gonna lie.
This really was a maddening case because it literally is just a fraction of a millimeter left or right, and Sean Taylor might have survived.
Sean's death is now a homicide, and it only adds to the pressure for detectives to find some answers, and fast.
I understood the implications of what it meant to have someone like that being shot. I knew there was going to be a lot of pressure.
It really was a mystery because all we knew was that somebody had gone into the home and shot Sean. I think everybody's suspicion was that it was not random. I think everyone assumed, no, this was someone that knew Sean Taylor, who came there for nefarious reasons, whether it was a burglary or whether it was just to kill him outright. I've covered a lot of random break-ins that end up in tragedies, and this one didn't have the hallmarks of that.
As word of Sean Taylor's death hits the 24-hour news cycle, some pundits speculated that Sean was just another high-profile athlete whose bad choices must have finally caught up with him.
I remember very clearly some reporters putting out stuff about Sean Taylor and how he was living a lifestyle that probably resulted in his death. It was very hurtful to the family. It was even hurtful to us as investigators. He was never more down to earth in his life than he was at that moment. Nothing indicated that anything he was doing should have led to him getting shot.
Following the death of NFL star Sean Taylor, detectives begin to doubt that his murder was a random crime.
This wasn't something where a random drug addict just broke in and suddenly decided to kill whoever the person was, and oh, it happened to be a football star. One of the more telling details about the break-in was the house wasn't ransacked. It almost seemed like whoever went in there knew exactly what they were looking for.
But according to Sean's loved ones, he had no known enemies, and he didn't live a lifestyle that would have brought danger into his life.
Especially at that stage in his life, he had a young baby and his girlfriend, his high school sweetheart. He wasn't someone that was known to be out, at South Beach at all hours of the night.
But detectives are made aware of one particular incident prior to his daughter's birth that does get their undivided attention.
Sean Taylor had an incident a couple years earlier where his ATVs had been stolen. Unfortunately, Sean, being a young guy and wanted to take care of things himself without getting the police involved, he was able to locate his ATVs. He found out who had them.
And he had gone and confronted them and brandished a weapon at them, and so he ended up getting arrested for a weapons charge.
Sean never had to do any prison time or anything, but that was one of the first things we had to consider and eliminate. Was it a group of guys involved in that came back to get revenge?
I thought it might have been somebody from the local guys that he might have had some words with, because the guys who were involved in that were some real serious guys.
But as detectives dig through the old case files, they determined that none of the men involved in the prior incident were anywhere near Palmetto Bay on the night of Sean's murder.
Some of the players involved were incarcerated at the time. One had moved out of town, and we verified he was out of town, and the other one we couldn't tie in to any phone records. So we were able to quickly eliminate that as being one of the reasons why Sean Taylor was killed.
But if Sean wasn't the intended target, maybe his house was. Detectives learn a shocking new detail that gives credit to the theory.
Sean Taylor was not really supposed to be home that night. And something goes wrong, and they're surprised by Sean Taylor, and Sean Taylor ends up getting killed.
Detectives learn that Sean's younger brother and sister were allowed to stay at the house anytime he was in Washington. They're brought in for questioning and reveal another shocking detail.
We found out about a November 18th burglary at the same residence. Nobody was home at the time.
An intruder had attempted to break into the house just 2 weeks prior to Sean's murder. Sean's siblings weren't there at the time, and Sean was in Washington. His brother and sister had filed a report, but since nothing was taken, the case never went any further. That is, until now.
That makes you think, hey, this is a pattern. Maybe this house is being targeted and being targeted for a reason.
Detective Segovia believes the perpetrator may be someone known to Sean and his family, someone familiar with Sean's movements and the living situation at his house. In other words, an inside job. Sean's siblings tell detectives about several parties and barbecues they had thrown at Sean's house over the last few months. The guest list typically consisted of just a handful of people.
It was, well, who attends those barbecues? Who else knows this house belongs to Sean Taylor?
Sean's siblings provide a list of names and numbers to the detectives.
I can't emphasize how important they were, especially when you have nothing to go on initially in a case, or you don't know what's relevant in the investigation.
Armed with a list of names, detectives look at every cell number that bounced off the closest tower to Sean's house at the time of the murder, hoping to find any matches.
We knew exactly within a minute when Sean Taylor was shot. So we were able to request numbers from his home tower for a very specific amount of time. So you think 3, 4 in the morning, only 4 people are talking on the phone. That's not the way it works. It's millions of phones. It's overwhelming.
Detectives study the numbers for hours before a pattern finally begins to emerge.
We see a couple of area code 239s pinging off the tower, and we're talking about a minute of when Sean Taylor was shot inside his residence.
Well, 239 area code is for the west coast of Florida, Fort Myers.
Through the interviews with the sister and the brother, we had learned that they had connections, friends, and other acquaintances from the Fort Myers area.
As they cross-reference the numbers and the list of names, detectives get a promising hit.
The first name that came through was Jason Scott Mitchell, who ended up being somebody that was mentioned by Sean Taylor's family as being a frequent visitor to the residence.
He was someone that had been in the house. He's around enough that maybe he's someone that could have something to do with it.
It was like an energy thrust into all of us, because for the first time in the case, something's matching up. There's no coincidence that that person has been to that house before, and they happen to be hitting off the same exact tower of Sean Taylor at the time he gets shot.
The investigation into the murder of NFL star Sean Taylor has just taken a dramatic turn. Detectives have identified their first viable suspect, a 19-year-old from Fort Myers named Jason Scott Mitchell.
Jason had this connection to the family. He would even do odd things around the house. He was someone cops could look at and say, maybe he might have something to do with it because he knows where things are.
Not only does cell phone data confirm that Mitchell was near the crime scene at the time Sean was shot, but police also begin receiving tips that provide even more details and names.
We begin to get now new tips coming from the Fort Myers area about a group of young guys who were bragging about having been involved in the homicide of Sean Taylor. So now it's streamlining and it's solidifying the individuals that we need to talk to.
Investigators narrow the list of suspects down to 4 additional names: Eric Rivera, Timmy Brown, Venja Hunt, and Charles Wardlow.
Once we identify these numbers and we begin to gather intelligence about these individuals, we knew they were all associated.
Agencies from across the state hit the streets from Miami to Fort Myers looking for any sign of the 5 suspects.
Not even an hour in, I was in the office and we immediately notified that Eric Rivera had been located and he was going to be interviewed.
On November 30th, detectives questioned 17-year-old Rivera.
It was a very gentle approach, and it wasn't even directly necessarily discussing a murder initially.
For the record, state your full name. Eric Rivera James. How old are you, sir? 17. And what did you say of birth? 449.
We got a lot of background information on him, who he lived with, kind of car he drove, what grade he was in, what his activities were, sports he liked playing. According to Rivera, he went to the movies that night with his girlfriend and his mom. I told him very quickly, it'll be very easy to verify. We'll bring your girlfriend in, we'll bring your mom in, we'll interview people at the movie theater. All that stuff checks out. Then couldn't have been you, no problem. And I could tell that started weighing on him.
Rivera does his best to sidestep the questions until the interview takes an unexpected turn.
I remember seeing his eyes just light up. And I saw him looking at something. And when I look back, I see Jason Scott Mitchell's being walked into one of the other rooms. And he sees that.
It's a common tactic for police to kind of prime the pumps by letting one see the other, because then, oh man, they have him here too. I better be the first to the table to start confessing, right? Let me pin all the blame on that guy. And ultimately, Eric told the truth.
Rivera admits to taking part in the robbery on November 26th, but he says Mitchell was the mastermind and the motive was money.
Sean's brother would always brag about how much money there was in the house. Oh man, there's always, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 in the house all the time.
Let's keep the door cord open. Come on.
What he doesn't realize, on the other side of that door, Jackie has already been awakened by a noise. She's already woke up Sean Taylor, and Sean reaches behind the headboard of the bed and brings out the machete.
Since Sean had been charged with brandishing a firearm when he went after his ATVs, he was no longer allowed to have a gun in his possession. Instead, his machete was his only protection.
You normally would have a weapon. There were so many things that could have changed things, but, what can I say?
When Rivera kicked in the door, 6'2", 230-pound NFL safety Sean Taylor was there waiting for him.
It was dark. I was looking at Jason out the corner of my eye, being friends. He was like 2 feet away. It's like in his hand, that's my shot.
He just lifted up the gun and fired it one time. And according to Eric Rivera, he just dropped right there on the spot. At the end of the day, they left with nothing. And somebody died for nothing, literally for nothing.
Shootings are nothing new to Miami, but Sean's murder was especially difficult for everyone in the city to process.
I've covered countless shootings in Miami, and I can't tell you how many times I've written about people literally getting shot up 10, 11, 12 times and managing to survive these god-awful bullet injuries. But this really was a maddening case because a man that age, in his athletic prime, superstar, famous person with a growing young family is not supposed to die in that way so suddenly.
Police now have 5 suspects in custody for the murder of rising NFL star Sean Taylor. 17-year-old Eric Rivera has already confessed to pulling the trigger. And now detectives turn their attention to the alleged mastermind, Jason Scott Mitchell.
Jason Mitchell starts talking. He really minimizes his involvement by saying, yes, I had seen the money there before. but really we were only there to break in. I didn't have the gun. I wasn't going there to kill anybody.
In the process of confessing, Mitchell also admits to breaking into Sean's house a couple of weeks before. On that previous attempt, he'd gone by himself, but walked away empty-handed. Just a week later, he attended another party at the house and overheard Sean's brother talking about the failed attempt.
Sean Taylor's brother mentions, man, somebody broke in the house and they're so dumb they never realized that I keep all my money in a shoebox right next to the nightstand. He goes back to Fort Myers and he now decides he's gotta gather more people. So he recruits his little buddies to come along with him this time and break into the house, and they're gonna look for this money and they're gonna find it this time.
These guys traveled from Fort Myers thinking, hey, Sean Taylor, the football star, the rich football star, isn't in town right now, so we'll have free reign, we can ransack the house, we'll go straight for the money. And that's not what happened.
Their tragic miscalculation cost Sean Taylor his life and left his girlfriend and young daughter wounded forever.
It's kind of like, gosh, you got to be careful who you have in your circle, but then who your family members have in their circle, because you just never know who may be looking at something that you have and may want it.
Benja Hunt ended up taking 2 pairs of sneakers, and that's all I took from the house.
On the way out of Miami, they dumped the gun in the Everglades.
They took all the stuff they were wearing, and they took the gun, put it inside one of the socks, and they flung it into the Everglades, right off the road. We attempted to, but we never recovered the property.
Mitchell puts all the blame on Rivera, but it does nothing to save him from murder charges.
Jason Mitchell places all the blame on Eric Rivera because he was the trigger man. And Eric Rivera places all the blame on Jason Mitchell because he was the mastermind. But at the end of the day, the police believe that they were equally as responsible.
The other 3 assailants, Wardlow, Brown, and Hunt, all eventually confess as well.
They all ended up giving complete confessions. All the stories matched almost exactly. So we knew that we had a pretty good understanding of what happened that night.
With confessions in hand, Miami police charge all 5 of the teenagers with armed burglary and second-degree murder.
It was like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. Calling a next of kin to tell them that we figured out who killed your loved one.
But the news is bittersweet.
You have so many questions that they can't be answered. You want to know what they were thinking. I want to know what he was thinking, what his girlfriend was thinking. That situation is something that nobody should ever have to be put in.
For Sean's fans and teammates, the pain runs just as deep.
This was in the middle of the football season when this happened. Your star safety is suddenly no longer there, and all his teammates are devastated.
He loved the fans, they loved him, and I actually became a Redskins fan because I've never seen a fan base so committed to their team.
As both Miami and Washington come to grips with the loss of their superstar, prosecutors ready the cases for trial. They receive some good news when one in the group decides to turn on the others.
In the first couple months after the arrests were made, Benja Hunt agreed to a plea. So he became a cooperating witness on the case.
But sadly, their early momentum comes to a screeching halt. The trials are postponed a total of 9 times due to court backups and scheduling delays. A full 6 years passes since Sean's death without any resolution.
It was a long and tortured path to get there. There was a lot of hearings, there was a lot of media coverage, there was a lot of legal fights in the run-up.
Sean's loved ones begin to wonder if he will ever get the justice he deserves.
It didn't feel too good, It wasn't a good situation.
You see him go from anger to sadness to indifference to frustration, and you just run the gamut of all the emotions.
Even with all the waiting, there's still no guarantee of a good outcome.
Trials are very, very unpredictable. You're asking 12 people to agree on something. Nowadays, you can't get people to agree on basically anything. What we found out as the case went on is that there was a lot of turmoil within the jurors themselves.
And that turmoil might be just enough reason to allow one of Sean's killers to walk free.
Eric Rivera took the stand and insisted that he was forced into confessing.
After 6 long years, the first trial in the murder of NFL star Sean Taylor finally begins. Eric Rivera, the confessed gunman, is the first to face the jury.
Eric Rivera really was the main attraction because he was the trigger man. So everybody wanted to know what's going to happen with his case.
Rivera's confession is the center point of the state's case.
We finally got to see, in Eric Rivera's own words, what his account of what happened that night was.
But Rivera's defense team raises questions about the confession. They argue that Rivera's interview lasted over 10 hours, but only a few minutes were actually recorded by police. They asked the jury to imagine what could have happened in the interrogation room when the camera was off.
The defense was basically, it was a false confession. That whole time, he was being browbeaten, he was being coerced, he was being told what to say.
Rivera takes the stand and tells a much different story from what the jury heard during the video.
Eric Rivera got on the stand and he tried to blame Benja Hunt and say that he was the one that brought the gun, that he was the one who did the firing. It's a risky strategy at trial because you're still admitting to taking part in the burglary, but with a videotape confession, it probably was the only way they could handle it.
On some level, the bold move actually seems to pay off.
There was one person in that jury who did not feel comfortable sending a young male to prison for the rest of his life. Final result was what we call a compromise verdict. They ended up finding him guilty of armed burglary and the homicide, but not using the firearm.
Instead of automatic life, Rivera is sentenced to 57.5 years.
To this day, I will never forget about that trial or my dealings with Eric Rivera, is that he has never shown remorse, ever, for what he did.
The group's ringleader, Jason Mitchell, stands trial the following year in May 2014.
Jason Mitchell did not testify in this trial, which probably was the right call. His statement was played, so the jury got to hear all of it. At the end of the day, he couldn't get past the fact that he was the mastermind and that he was the one that set everything in motion, and the jury believed it.
Despite not being the shooter, he got life. I think at that point, the remaining two realized and saw the writing on the wall. They realized that we better just plead this out and try to reduce the amount of time we're going to spend.
Benja Hunt has already accepted a 29-year plea deal. Now, Charles Wardlow is sentenced to 30 years as well. The youngest defendant, Timmy Lee Brown, takes a plea in exchange for 18 years.
I think Pete Taylor, Sean Taylor's dad, he was a little more forgiving by that time and maybe saw something in Timmy Lee Brown, maybe giving him a chance at a life someday. Benja Hunt was another guy involved that I don't believe by any means he's a bad kid. Just did something really, really stupid that ended up costing somebody's life. There's no doubt that I think when Benja gets out that he'll be able to be a productive member of society. I hope he's learned his lesson, and I hope Timmy Lee Brown at least, they'll come out and do something with their lives.
Nearly 15 years after Sean Taylor's murder, his legacy lives on, not only for his loved ones, but for the thousands of fans whose lives he touched as well.
There's not a day that goes by that there's not somebody talking about him, so I know he had a big impact on the world. You go to a game and his jersey is still the dominant jersey in the stadium. Lets you know that, kids that weren't even born are wearing his jersey.
I don't think it really registered even until today totally how much he meant. But I know he was, he loved everyone and he cared for the community and family.
That one bullet changed the trajectory of his family's, his parents' life, his girlfriend's life, his young daughter who's not going to remember much of anything about her father in person, and the trajectory of a whole football franchise. Not a whole franchise has been in turmoil for decades since then. It really is just a terrible story that just continues to percolate.
He was a great football player. He was a great father, great cousin, brother.
See you in the morning.
What are you doing here?
On March 17, 2010, we get a call at the homicide office that there's been a detective from New York City trying to get in touch with us to help him with a case.
It's not totally uncommon for us to speak with other detectives from other agencies and other jurisdictions, whether it's somewhere else in Georgia or other parts of the country.
At this point, our interest is piqued, so we head back to the office to reach out to this NYPD detective to see what's going on.
Hey, this is Detective Velasquez at Atlanta PD.
Hey, thanks for calling back.
He says his name is Detective Eddie Wilkowski with NYPD Homicide.
I've left messages with different detectives in your office, but you're the first to call back.
Hey, today's your lucky day, brother. How can we help you?
I got an open homicide from 2000.
Detective Wilkowski goes on to say his murder occurred in Queens, New York.
The victim was 23-year-old Danielle Kitt. The body was found in her home. The place had been torched.
They found Danielle on her back on the living room floor, naked, face covered. A lot of times the murderers cover the victim's face because they know the victim.
All right, what's the cause of death?
Strangulation. We believe the fire was set to destroy evidence. This case has become an obsession for me.
Hey, you're our kind of cop, man.
Every detective in homicide has that case that you just can't let go. We felt that passion coming out of that speaker box. We wanted in. We wanted to help this brother.
So what's the Atlanta connection?
The guy, his name is Lee Hines, goes by Nitty. Danielle had issues with him.
He was pursuing her, and he got to be where he was becoming a problem, where she really couldn't get rid of him.
I believe in my heart that Nitty killed her.
Believing it and being able to prove it and have enough for probable cause are two different things, and we were not there.
So is Lee Hines in Atlanta?
I don't know, but I think he dropped the body down there.
Detective Wilkowski's developed witnesses that says Lee Hines actually killed somebody in Atlanta.
Her name is LaCharity Gaines. Supposedly, it's an unsolved homicide from 2003.
Never heard that name in my entire life. It's not on our board. It's not on our unsolved list.
That doesn't sound familiar.
Look, my case is going nowhere.
What I hear in Eddie's voice is that this Lee Hines character is so dangerous that it doesn't matter what case gets solved, that we got to get this guy off the street before he kills more women.
All right, we'll do some digging and circle back.
Thanks.
Yeah. Let's see what's up.
We're excited because it's all about going back to the cold case room, blowing the dust off a box and trying to figure out how we can help this brother out.
All right, like looking for buried treasure. Yeah.
When Eddie gives us this name of our victim, LaCharity Gaines, we don't even know if that's a real name, a real victim. We got to look if this case even exists.
Here we go. Gaines, LaCharity.
We discovered this case file, and we really do have a legitimate victim, LaCharity Gaines.
Yo, she was 23 years old at the time of the murder, man.
She had 2 children, and she lived in the 04th Ward neighborhood.
Okay, so it looks like it all started February 26, 2003.
Hello? LaCharity's daughter calls her grandmother and says mom is missing.
All right, her grandmother, Bernice, lives in the same building. Went to check out the apartment. No sign of LaCharity, no sign of the purse, no sign of the car or the boyfriend. Let me guess, Lee Hines. Right. But Grandma only knows this guy as Nitty.
What we understand was Nitty was the last person known to be with LaCharity.
All right, so Bernice doesn't know much about Nitty. She says that her daughter only dated him for a short time. But what made Grandmother know right away that this was foul play? Mother's intuition.
According to LaCharity's mother, LaCharity would never leave her kids, ever be absent from the family home.
There's also the fact that all of Nitty's stuff was gone, and a chunk of cash.
She says her daughter, LaCharity, had just received her tax return for $2,000. There's a lot of motive right now for a missing person with a car, purse, money, and a victim that's having a strained relationship with somebody who cleared out all of their clothes from the same apartment that they shared.
So, Bernice calls her brother into town to help out with the search.
Hello? She's calling in family reinforcements. She wants her daughter found. And immediately, he smells a foul odor. And he's thinking it's trash, so he goes directly to where the trash is, and that's not the issue. He goes into the pantry next to the kitchen, and that's when he finds LaCharity wrapped up in a carpet. Dead.
Oh. That's terrible.
Yeah.
The horror of seeing that and then having to tell his sister, the victim's mother, what he found.
Okay, so what did it say was the cause of death?
She was killed with a knife.
He died from one single stab wound to the back.
Stabbed in the back?
If Nitty indeed is our suspect, and we know they already have a strained relationship, more than likely, our victim is trying to run away.
Suspect kills her, starts doing the cleanup.
We know, working homicide now for 10 years, when you conceal a body, that means you're connected to that victim. You want time, you want space, you want distance. You need a head start. Most people that just kill people for a simple robbery, stranger on stranger, they're not hiding their bodies.
Who caught the case?
James Carr. Detective Carr interviews some family, interviews some friends. They all point their finger to Nitty, and Carr jumps out there, makes an arrest.
What do you have on Nitty?
Not enough, apparently.
We're like, wait a minute, full stop. Where is the probable cause? We couldn't believe that a judge even signed that warrant. We were completely floored.
And LaCharity's case is listed as closed by arrest.
All right, so it says he was arrested on July 23rd, 2003, but he was never indicted and he was released.
That means that was a get-out-of-jail-free card, literally. And he went back to New York, which was totally within his rights.
He never went to a grand jury.
This case was never formally charged. This case never made it out of municipal court in 2003. So although our records show this is a closed by arrest case, this case is wide open.
So it says here that Carr retired soon after.
And the case went into limbo.
Right.
So as people transition in and out of the homicide office, new detectives, old detectives, this case is not on anybody's radar.
I think Carr had the right guy. He just didn't build enough to get a real prosecution.
Let's rehab this thing.
This is an open case hiding in plain sight in the closed case files.
Yo, if Lee Hines is our killer, he's linked to 2 open murders.
There was no way we're gonna let him get away twice.
Hey, Eddie.
We'll do whatever it takes to bring this case back to life.
We're on the case. Talk soon.
To solve this case, we'll need to follow a trail littered with violence.
This was worse than we had imagined.
All right, what's the game plan?
I'll take the lead.
Got it.
We're taking this case from ATL up to NYC.
He said he killed her.
What?
This guy used fear as a weapon.
As we close in on the killer,
Somebody want to talk to you.
the real games begin.
Jason said.
This has got to be one of the most manipulative, narcissistic killers we have ever encountered.
How can we help you?
I got an open homicide from 2000.
In 2010, we get a call from an NYPD detective who's working a case that's possibly got some ties to Atlanta.
I think you dropped a body down there.
He said a suspect in his case by the name of Lee Hines may have killed a victim in our jurisdiction by the name of LaCharity Gaines.
Okay, so what did it say was the cause of death?
She was killed with a knife.
When we look in the file, we see that Lee Hines was actually arrested for the murder of LaCharity Gaines back in 2003, but nothing happened after that.
Yo, I don't get it. He never went to a grand jury.
The original detective didn't have enough to move forward, so Lee Hines, AKA Nitty, receives a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yo, if Lee Hines is our killer, he's linked to 2 open murders.
We gotta break out the defibrillator and bring this case back to life.
Hey, Eddie, we're on the case.
Outstanding.
The first thing we want to do is we want to look at everybody closest to the victim. We start by re-interviewing a woman named Michaela Ross.
Thank you for your time.
I'll help however I can.
She was her best friend, and she wanted justice.
What can you tell us about LaCharity's boyfriend?
Nitty. She wanted him out, but he wouldn't leave.
And we're talking about somebody that started a relationship 2 months in, and now he's dropped anchor, he ain't going nowhere. That's a problem.
She was scared of him.
Okay, why was she scared of him?
He threatened to kill her.
Wait, she told you this?
Yes.
For Michaela, in 2003, the red flags were flapping all over the place.
So when was the last time you saw the charity?
The day before she disappeared, she got her tax money and bought some real nice Burberry shoes.
She was so proud of these shoes that literally she called Michaela up and said, you gotta come over here. You gotta see these shoes I bought.
The night before, she called me whispering, he wouldn't leave, he wouldn't leave.
She could hear the fear in LaCharity's voice. And then she says, I gotta go, and hangs up.
Then I called her back, she didn't answer.
And we already know that night, LaCharity was killed.
You should call my mom Grace.
Your mom? Why?
Because she stayed underneath LaCharity. Said she heard some things.
We gotta go talk to her because we got no actual written statement from anyone named Grace about anything involved in the killing of LaCharity Gaines.
After we finish with Michaela, we shoot straight out to see Grace Ross, her mother. We gotta figure out what she remembers.
Hi, I'm Detective Velasquez. This is my partner, Detective Quinn.
My daughter said you were coming by.
Grace vividly remembers the night LaCharity disappeared.
It was yelling, banging.
Why are you still here? I told you it was over already.
All the signs of a struggle, all the signs of some type of altercation happening.
What time was this?
Around midnight.
You need to get out. Get out.
She hears her phone ring. She sees on the caller ID that it's actually LaCharity.
I didn't answer. I don't know why.
Did you keep hearing the noise after that?
I heard a scream.
She heard a loud scream coming from LaCharity's apartment, but then it got really quiet. She thought whatever the situation had worked itself out upstairs.
I went to sleep, didn't think nothing else about it until she turned up missing, then dead.
Here's my card. If you think of anything else, don't hesitate, give us a call.
Grace just confirmed that there was a fight and a struggle. At this point, we feel that Lee Hines, AKA Nitty, is our killer, but we still gotta be able to prove it. So far, we're not much closer than the original detective.
All we have is our intuition and a few old statements. So we go ahead and submit a request for all the evidence in this case. Evidence recovered at the scene, evidence collected at autopsy, everything.
So we figured the best strategy to build a case against Lee Hines is to examine his other relationships. It seems highly likely that his violent behavior wasn't limited to LaCharity Gaines and possibly Tennille Kidd.
We reached out to Detective Eddie Wilkowski for names.
He provided contact information for a woman named Jackie Griffin who Nitty dated after Tennille's death. So that's someone we definitely wanted to talk to. After getting this information from Detective Wilkowski, I find that Jackie Griffin is living in South Carolina. We find a number for her. I give her a call.
Hello?
Hi, Miss Griffin.
Yes?
This is Vince Velasquez. I'd like to ask you a few questions about a guy that goes by Nitty. You know who that is?
Yes. We met in New York and dated on and off for years.
She was having the same issues that our victim, LaCharity Gaines, was. He's giving her everything she wants, and suddenly this relationship sours. She starts to tell her friends, I don't know about this guy.
When y'all were together, had he ever physically assaulted you?
He might slap me here and there, and I didn't report it. I broke up with him, and things got ugly.
She goes on to say that her house in Queens was burned to the ground, and she always suspected Nitty did it because this was right after their breakup.
I decided to move to Virginia, and he found me.
Out of nowhere, Nitty pops back up in her life, and he's coming bearing gifts.
He had this gold chain, it was a thin chain with some little gold balls around, and a pair of Burberry shoes that he had given me.
I had looked at my partner, wait a minute.
The day before she disappeared, she bought some real nice Burberry shoes.
When was this?
2003, maybe March.
We're thinking, did Nitty take these shoes after killing our victim, drive to Virginia, and gifts her this dead woman's shoes?
So let me ask you, what size shoe do you wear?
I wear 8.5 in the women's.
And what were those size, do you remember?
They were 8.5 because they fit perfectly.
You still have those shoes?
I got rid of them years ago.
Now, did you two move back to New York?
No, we went to South Carolina, and that's when it happened.
The relationship right on point, takes a dramatic turn in the bad direction.
We were living in a motel.
I don't even understand why we're here. I told you a million times that I wanted to go back to New York.
Get into this huge argument.
What'd you say? You ain't going nowhere.
All of a sudden, he stops.
You ain't going nowhere.
He pours an accelerant on the bed that she's laying on and tries to light her on fire. For some reason, by the grace of God, the accelerant that he used didn't ignite.
I've never been so terrified.
Lee Hines is then arrested for the assault on Jackie Griffin in South Carolina.
Did you press charges?
No, I couldn't do it.
We have seen women time and time again get abused, and they just fall under this spell, this control of their abuser.
I just wanted him out of my life.
In fact, it worked. She was able to get away from Lee Hines. She moved and got on with her life.
All right, thank you for your time.
Sure.
Bye.
Victim number 3, the lucky one.
Yo, we're just scratching the surface here.
We're asking ourselves, how many women has this guy really hurt?
The investigation is about to take us on a road trip. There may be other victims out there.
We could not let him get away twice.
So what did it say was the cause of death?
She was killed with a knife.
We're investigating the 2003 murder of 23-year-old LaCharity Gaines in Northeast Atlanta.
Threatened to kill her?
The primary suspect is the man she was dating prior to her death. An individual known as Nitty, AKA Lee Hines.
When was this?
2003, maybe March.
As we dig deeper in the case, we run into a witness that actually discloses that Nitty gifted her a pair of shoes that we believe belonged to our victim.
Yo, we're just scratching the surface here.
We're finding out this guy Nitty definitely has a pattern. We feel like we got a good case here.
All right, let's roll.
And now it's time to go talk to our victim's family.
Whatever I can do to get justice for my daughter.
LaCharity's mom was on board 1,000%. It's almost as if she had been waiting for this day for the past 7 years for somebody to tell her, we haven't given up.
What can you tell us about the man she was dating?
It was good at first, but after he moved in, she saw a side of him she didn't like.
Everything just started taking such a violent turn just by the aura of this guy being there.
So she told him to move out. And then she and I spent the day together. When she got home that night, she called and said that he was still there.
What are you doing here?
He's still there, and she was really nervous, and she didn't know what to do.
The next morning is when I learned that she was gone missing. Y'all know the rest of the story.
So the shoes pique our interest.
Your daughter had some shoes that were missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, describe the shoes. She describes them as these Burberry wedges, size 8.5. We're thinking back to Jackie Griffin, who received a pair of 8.5 size Burberry wedge shoes.
They were 8.5 because they fit perfectly.
Did she also have a necklace that was missing?
Yes. The one I gave her on her birthday, it was gold with little gold balls on it.
Again, we're back to Jackie Griffin describing this necklace given to her by Lee Hines.
She had this gold chain. It was a thin chain with some little gold balls around it.
We know for a fact that necklace is LaCharity Gaines.
Unreal, man. We're gonna do everything we can to find this guy, okay? Thank you, Mom.
Right now, everything we're looking at is lining up.
At this point, me and my partner have decided we've done everything we needed to do here in Atlanta. It was time to take this thing up to NYC. We hopped on a plane and went up to the Big Apple. We meet Detective Wachowski and head to Queens.
This is the last address I had for Hines. Lived here with a girl named Camira Betancourt.
All right, what's the game plan?
I'll take the lead.
Got it.
They came and hit the ground running. I was excited. I thought we were making headway.
Camira,
Yeah,
we have a few questions for you about Lee Hines. Nitty.
he don't live here, and I don't know where he is.
She says she ain't seen the brother, she don't know where he is, she put him out, lottie-dottie.
Eddie's doing the talking, we're watching. I'm trying to pick up on things that he may not be seeing. I see the tattoo.
She's got a fresh tattoo on her neck that reads Nitty, and I almost see the blood still dripping from the tattoo needle.
Come on, Kamira. Just tell us where he is.
And I'm telling you, I haven't seen him in a while.
Sometimes it's just better just leave it alone. We'll live to fight another day.
We're from Atlanta, just in case you talk to Nitty.
This is an unwelcome four-story walk-up, so we go ahead and decide to leave a card with Miss Betancourt. If she hears anything about Nitty, to give us a call.
That didn't go so well.
That's all right. I got another girl we can try who lives in Far Rockaway.
Okay.
The girlfriend's name is Luisa Diaz. This is another girl that apparently Nitty has had a current relationship with. We're thinking maybe that's where Nitty is right now.
Hey, Luisa?
Luisa answers the door, and from an expressionless look to a scowl, immediately says, "What do you want?"
What the hell are you guys doing here? You need to get out of here now.
This sister Louisa lost her mind. She flipped and blew her wig.
Are you Pig Steph? You're not wanted here.
We're just...
Luisa Diaz went completely belligerent on us, screaming, cussing us out.
We just have a few questions.
I don't know nothing.
Her New York, Puerto Rican accent, and I know it because I'm Puerto Rican. I was born in the Bronx, and I've heard it a million times.
Okay, so tell us about Nitty and we'll
You didn't hear what I just said? I don't know who you're talking about.
We knew that was BS.
We knew for a fact she was down with Nitty. She was just creating some kind of a smokescreen.
She literally turns around, marches back inside, slams the door.
We are striking out today.
Here comes Luisa with a phone in her hand, walks right up to me and hands me the phone, says, "Here."
Somebody want to talk to you.
I grabbed the phone, put it to my ear. I'm like, who am I speaking with?
Hello?
Yo, it's Nitty.
Mira?
Yeah?
I have a few questions for you about Lee Hines.
Nitty.
He don't live here, and I don't know where he is.
The cold case murder of LaCharity Gaines has taken us from Atlanta to New York City. We hook up with NYPD Detective Eddie Wilkowski to chase down Lee Hines.
Somebody want to talk to you.
While visiting one of Nitty's girlfriends, she hands me the phone.
Hello?
Yo, it's Nitty.
Totally shocked.
Why you asking about it?
Nitty was curious. Why are we in town? A master manipulator, he's got to know what the script is. What am I dealing with?
All right, so check it out. I'm investigating the murder of LaCharity Gaines, the case you were arrested for back in '03.
So I go on to tell Nitty, I'm here because we want to ask you some questions. You're not under arrest. We don't have a warrant for you.
What do you think? Can we talk?
Sometimes these guys do want to speak to you because a guy like Nitty, he thinks he's smarter than everybody else.
Sure, but I need to run it by my attorney first.
All right, cool.
We wanted to make sure that we had FaceTime with Nitty. We didn't want to spook him.
All right, hit me back once you've spoken with your lawyer.
All right.
All right, cool. Thank you.
I'm playing it breaks off real easy with Nitty. We're going to do the soft approach and see if Nitty calls us back.
So we finish up with Louisa.
Where to next?
I got another girl.
It's looking up already.
And we head off to the next former girlfriend of Nitty, and it happens to be a girl by the name of Jasmine Smith.
We called Jasmine first and arranged a meeting.
We appreciate your time, Jasmine.
This sister jumps in the back seat of the car, and she's looking around and peeking over her shoulders.
Nitty doesn't know I'm talking to you, right?
That's correct.
She indicated that she, although deathly afraid of Nitty, knew that he was a monster. She wanted him off the street just as badly as we did.
So talk to us about Nitty.
We dated on and off for a couple of years.
When?
2008 to 2009. He moved into my place.
Lee Hines, his MO is basically convincing these women that he's the best thing that ever happened since they started slicing cheese. But what he really needs is money. He needs a place to stay. He needs sustenance, sex, control.
All right, so why are you so afraid of him?
He showed me some paperwork that said he was arrested for killing the girl in Atlanta.
She actually sees the arrest ticket. This is Nitty using this form of control and manipulation on women to instill fear in them.
I didn't want to be next.
Nitty is not just a killer, he's a serial abuser of women. And he uses fear and intimidation to keep him in his lair.
He's bragging about what he did without ever saying anything else. I got locked up for killing somebody. This is what could happen to you if you don't do what I tell you to do.
Did he tell you what happened to that woman?
He said he killed her.
What?
That's the best news we've had since we landed in New York City. That's a third-party confession.
Yeah, said he hid in the closet or something. And nobody found him until she started thinking.
Did he say anything else to you?
He mentioned there were 2 kids in the home at the time.
He basically told a person who has absolutely nothing to do with this case details about a murder that only the killer would know.
He told me there were other victims as well. One in New York.
He said that he killed a girl in Jamaica Estates who broke his heart, and we believed that the girl he was speaking to her about was Tennille Kidd.
I'm just so happy to have gotten away from him.
This is great information. I mean, Jasmine Smith has given us the crown jewels of this investigation.
Are you willing to testify to everything that you've just said?
I don't know.
She's a little ambivalent. She's not really sure. I mean, her level of fear is far away and extreme.
We're trying to get all these details. My phone rings.
Excuse me, I have to take this.
I'm thinking maybe this is Nitty's lawyer calling me.
Detective Velasquez.
It's a woman who identifies herself as Pauline Clark, who tells me she's a reverend and Nitty's spiritual advisor.
B has asked for my help.
And I'm just taken aback, and I'm like, okay, here we have another woman calling me on behalf of Lee Hines. I mean, the madness never ends.
He's worried.
Well, just tell him we just want to talk to him, that's all.
So I give her a proposition. I said, you're more than welcome to do a 3-way call and stay on the call and listen.
That sounds fair. Let me try to get him on the line.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. How'd it go with Jasmine?
We gotta work on getting her to testify.
Yeah. So was that Nitty's lawyer?
No, his spiritual advisor. She's facilitating a call with him right now.
Now we're going to get a second crack at him. This has been an amazing investigative field trip. I'm loving it.
Hold up. Here we go.
I got to get this thing memorialized. This may be the only opportunity ever to get this guy on tape.
Hello?
Detective, I have Lee Hines on the line.
Okay.
Hey. This brother thinks he can outsmart us, but we're way smarter.
Did he tell you what happened to that woman?
He said he killed her.
The LaCharity Gaines murder investigation is wrapping up.
After speaking to several girlfriends, past and present, of Nitty, we are convinced that he's responsible for the death of LaCharity Gaines.
B has asked for my help.
A face-to-face meeting with him in New York was canceled.
Let me try to get him on the line.
Okay, thanks.
If she's willing to facilitate a call and I could lock Nitty in on some information on the phone and record it, I wasn't missing this opportunity. It wasn't 5 minutes.
Hold on.
Where she calls back.
All right, here we go.
Detective, I have Lee Hines on the line.
And she's got Lee Hines on a 3-way call with me.
Hey.
I can't wait to hear what else he has to say.
Okay, so the woman that was murdered in this particular investigation, her name was LaCharity Gaines. Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay, you never heard of LaCharity Gaines?
No.
That's the last thing I ever expected him to say.
Okay, weren't you two dating in Atlanta?
No, I was only in Atlanta with my old girlfriend, Jackie.
Let me ask you this. While you were there, how long were you there for?
It was like a couple of days because I was back in South Carolina. It had to be like 2000, 2001.
This joker says he hadn't been to Atlanta since 2001, but his get-out-of-jail-free card says you were there in 2003, fool.
I only went there because I was doing work with a rapper that go by $500,000.
He said that $500,000 was an up-and-coming rapper connected to Nas, the rapper that was very popular in the early 2000s. But what's interesting is we know our case was in 2003.
He's like my stepbrother. His name is $500,000. His real name is Jason. So Jason Warlow.
Okay, have you ever been involved with a woman in the presence of her mother?
No, never.
I just heard Nitty, with a bucket of glue, paint himself into a corner.
All I need now is either a piece of forensic evidence to link him to our victim or an eyewitness to say that's him. And he is done.
So let me ask you a question. You were arrested for murdering a woman in Atlanta. Do you think they just picked your name out of the sky?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I can't think for another person. I just think for myself.
I'm getting no's on everything. I'm not pushing too hard. The only thing that Lee Hines admits to is that he goes by the name Nitty.
Pretty Nitty. Pretty Nitty. Okay. Let me make sure I write that down. Pretty Nitty. Yeah, Pretty Nitty. Gotcha. All right, I think I'm done.
All right, thanks for your time.
That was a whole lot of lying.
And we got it all on tape, baby.
We've done everything we can do in New York at this point.
All right, let's roll.
It's time to go back to Atlanta. Our first order of business is to track down the rapper Half a Mil, who Nitty said he was with in Atlanta.
All right, so he said his name is Jason Wardlaw.
Half a Mil is a guy that Nitty admitted to me on the phone that he spent some time in 2000, 2001 managing him as a rapper. So if he's that close, he's probably got information that may help this case.
So Carr actually spoke with him in 2003. So we have a phone number. Give me a second.
Hello?
Hey, I'm trying to reach Jason.
Who's this?
How you doing? My name's Vince Velasquez, over in Atlanta Police.
The woman on the phone is Jason's wife, Wanda.
Hello?
Jason's dead.
I'm sorry to hear that. When did he pass?
2003.
Wanda goes on to tell us the details of her husband's death was kind of suspicious. However, the medical examiner ruled it a suicide.
I'm working a murder case from 2003. Now, did Jason ever know a guy named Lee Hines or Nitty?
Yeah?
She confirms the relationship that Lee Hines had with her late husband, Jason Wardlaw, as his manager in a rap deal.
Have you ever heard the name LaCharity Gaines?
Yeah. I remember one time she called and spoke with Jason.
Her husband, Half a Mil, said that our victim was pleading with him to come and get Nitty out of her house.
Okay, so she wanted Jason to help her with Nitty?
Uh-huh. But he didn't want to get involved. Then after he heard that woman got killed, Jason talked to the detective and told him about the conversation.
I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Yo, this case goes in so many directions.
Right. We just need to stay the course on the charity.
100%.
We know that Nitty's responsible, but now we need the evidence to prove it.
All right, come on.
The original evidence from storage finally comes in.
Let's see what we got.
Well, me and Vince feel like we did the boots on the ground work. We've trampled all over Atlanta. We've been up in the Big Apple, grabbing evidence, feeling pretty good. It's time now to start going through the physical evidence.
It's like looking for a needle.
All right. Oh, here we go. Gaines, LaCharity. Check this out.
We see where there was hair collected at autopsy in the hand of a victim, LaCharity Gaines.
All right, now wait a minute. So this was in her hand.
Right.
We know our victim is stabbed in the back. She's probably fighting. If this hair is the killer's hair, that confirms she is trying to get away from this guy.
Yo, look at this. This was never sent to the lab.
We know Detective Carr had been a homicide for many years. He's old school. A lot of those guys didn't really believe in the science. We embraced it.
Yo, Vinny, I'm telling you, if this belongs to Nitty, he's done.
That is huge. We're talking almost 8 years later. We got to get that stuff out to the GBI. It's forensic time. Let's get it done.
All right, let's send this over for testing right now.
If we get a profile and happens to be Nitty, that's the nail in the coffin.
Let me call our boy in New York.
Good call. It's like looking for a needle.
While re-examining the evidence collected in 2003 in the LaCharity Gaines homicide case, we realized that evidence was never tested.
If this belongs to Nitty, he's done.
This was a huge departmental oversight, but we're gonna let that stuff chill for now.
Let me call our boy in New York.
Our main concern is to get Nitty back down here in the South where he can be dealt with properly.
Yeah.
Hey, Eddie. Listen, we got some news. We're gonna send some evidence over for testing.
I've got news too. You're not gonna believe this. Nitty's locked up.
Vinny was arrested for being in possession of a gun on Mott Avenue, right near where he was living, and he went into Rikers Island.
At least he's off the street.
Amen.
I'm like, thank God. We got to get him. But I wasn't ready yet. I'm still waiting on forensic evidence.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere for a while.
That's good. Now we can take our time and make our case rock solid.
We got Nitty on ice, on a real charge, up in New York, where the gun laws are way different than they are down here in the dirty South. He's gonna be sitting for a minute, which gives us time.
All right, we'll talk soon, man. Thanks. Nice. Okay.
Let's take it to the lab.
It didn't work in 2003. We want to make sure that we get this thing right.
With Nitty safely behind bars, we slowly went to work on the forensics. Not only did we test the hairs from the autopsy, we also looked at items in LaCharity's car.
The car was found abandoned at a bus station in Charlotte, North Carolina, just 1 week after the murder. CSI found Nitty's palm print on a CD case inside the car.
In October 2013, 3 years after we started the case, we brought Lee Hines down to Atlanta and charged him with LaCharity's murder.
We tried to interview him, but he wouldn't talk.
And that's fine. We'll just let the science do the talking.
With Nitty in custody, we served a search warrant for DNA samples and hair for comparison.
Special delivery.
What's up?
DNA results on Nitty. But you gotta open it.
Okay. The hair in her hand, that autopsy belongs to Nitty.
That's what I'm talking about.
The DNA, 1,000% matches Lee Hines. That's his DNA.
See, that's that CSI stuff I'm talking about right there, baby.
She has basically a defensive posture holding the hair of her killer in her hand. It doesn't get any better than that.
We did it, brother.
We literally high-fived. We were like, it's done. This case is going to trial. Lee Hines is going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
All right, let me call Eddie.
Even though Lee Hines refused to speak to me and Ben, we're able to piece together the story of what happened that night.
I love you. I'll see you in the morning.
What we think is after LaCharity put the children to bed, she had already made outcries to several people.
He won't leave. I don't know what to do.
She wanted out of this relationship, so we know that everything came to a head that fateful night that she went missing.
Why are you still here? I told you it was already over.
That probably culminated into a conversation just trying to convince Lee Hines to leave. She probably felt that she could handle this.
I own you.
He is not a man that takes rejection. I think he felt at any point,
You need to get out.
she's probably gonna call the police. And he snapped. He picked up a knife. She saw it. That's the scream that her best friend's mother heard downstairs.
LaCharity Gaines takes that sharp force injury to the back, which ends her life. Mr. Hines then takes our victim, LaCharity Gaines, wraps her up in a carpet, hides her inside of a closet. This was awful. All evidence points that Lee Hines took the car, drove it up to Charlotte, parked it in close proximity to a bus station. We believe he got on the bus and got up out of the area. In November 2014, Lee Hines, AKA Nitty, goes to trial, gets found guilty, and gets sentenced to life in prison. The conviction is bittersweet news for Detective Wilkowski.
I believe that Nitty, Lee Hines, is the murderer of Tennille Kidd. It's just that we weren't able to establish enough evidence for the DAs to present a court case to go forward with it.
How can we help you?
I got an open homicide from 2000.
When I look back at this case, there's one person that we have to thank. Queens homicide detective Eddie Wilkowski, because he couldn't solve his case.
This case has become an obsession for me.
This case never left him.
I was proud to be your mother.
It's a tragedy of epic proportion. We're just glad we were able to hop in, assist, and bring this thing to